Welcome to All Politics Are Local, another All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are here with another week, another night. It is April 7th, 2023, and we have a really good show on tonight. At 6 p.m., we're going to be talking to Dr. Johanna Fernandez on Mumia Abu Jamal's denied appeal and the continued mistreatment of political prisoners in the United States. This is going to be a really good conversation, and we're always honored to talk to Dr. Fernandez. And when she comes on, we'll talk about her, the things that she's done, and Mumia and what's going on there. 7 p.m., we're going to have Louise, Dente, and Cinque Brath on for their film, The Grandassa Models. That's also a tribute to Kwame Braithwaite. It really, a lot of people have not heard of them, but if you heard of Black is Beautiful, then you should. Yes, that Black is Beautiful.
Precisely where it comes from.
Nice, right? And we're going to find out more about that tonight. You know, on this Black and Beautiful, natural Black hair, like loving ourselves, all that. At 7:30, we have DJ Rhino on the state of hip hop. And at 8 p.m., we're going to have the Payne Report with Congressman Payne. So Congressman Payne will be with us at 8 o'clock tonight. And yes, we have Dr. Johanna Fernandez on right now. Hello, Professor.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Welcome.
You're good.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much for having me on your show.
No, thank you. Thank you for being here. I was just reading some stuff about your background, right? And just some of the stuff that you've done to uncover things before within law enforcement. There was you issued a Freedom of Information Act that was powerful for basically all of the United States in understanding the ways in which policing and surveillance works. And
big deal, Jonathan. That's a big deal.
And it was called why was that such a big deal? Why was the release of all that information coming from the Freedom of Information Act? Why was that so important to understand how New York City police work? And as just an introduction to who you are, and then we can get into what's going on with Mumia, because a lot of people may know about Mumia, they may know about some of our guests, but sometimes it's good to give background on who you are and the magnitude of the people that we have on.
This is a teachable platform.
Thank you so very much, Jonathan, and thank you, Baba Said, for the invitation. Yes, so this Freedom of Information lawsuit that I filed with the New York Police Department in 2014 is important for all kinds of different reasons. It would really take an entire program to discuss, but I'll try to be brief. You probably know about the Panther 21 case. It emerged when it was discovered that police had pretty much framed the Black Panther Party in New York. How had the police framed the Black Panther Party? Essentially, they sent agents, police agents, into the Black Panther Party in 1968-69. And these agents stirred up trouble and themselves suggested that, hey, why don't we blow this up and blow that up? And they accused the Black Panther Party of attempting to blow up the Board of Education office in Queens, a police department, and some other entity that escapes me. This was the longest trial in New York City history. And over the course of the trial, the lawyers who were defending the Black Panther Party realized, hold it, there are some pretty serious constitutional violations here. The trial ended, the Panther 21 trial ended, and the lawyers of the National Lawyers Guild decided we have enough information from what we've gathered about what the police did to the Black Panther Party that we can sue the NYPD for violating First Amendment rights. Now, for your listening audience, the First Amendment was litigated in the 1920s by the ACLU for the first time on the basis of free speech. That's because during World War I, the government of the United States arrested everyone and their mother who made a statement against the war. Um, so there was an enormous amount of government overstretch and arresting of people like us who speak up. So that litigation, which pretty much brought the First Amendment to American society as a thing that should be defended, was organized around speech. But this time, after the Black Panther Party is persecuted by the NYPD, lawyers decide that they are going to litigate the First Amendment on the issue of association. That you have the right to be associated with whatever group you want to be associated without persecution by the government and the police. So this is known as the Handshoe case,
Right.
which lasted forever. In 1985, it was filed in 1971 or 72. It was finally won in 1985, and the judge, Judge Haight, that was his name, said we won. So the people won, and the judge said, first of all, we have to establish parameters and rules dictating what the cops can and cannot do, who they can follow and surveil, and who they cannot. And they need to essentially ask a court permission to follow or surveil groups or citizens only if they are a danger to society. At the same time that Judge Haight issued the Handshoe rules about what the police can and cannot do. And this is important, by the way, because Muslims who were persecuted after 9/11 used the Handshoe case to defend themselves against constitutional violations after 9/11. And few people know that it was the persecution of the Black Panthers
Right.
that led to this stretching of the definition of democracy.
I got to stop you there for several
Okay.
reasons. I'm about to lose my mind. Right. So one, I work with the ACLU here in Jersey, and I didn't know that. And I know all the young folks that I work with at ACLU did know that about the ACLU's underpinnings in this back in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Two, Judge Haight, really? Judge Haight is the same hate that drove us nuts and we were pushing for Mutulu Shakur's release. He
Yes.
is still a presiding judge, and he is in his 90s now.
He is
Right?
other time, essentially.
Oh my God! And you know, but I want you to continue now. I also want you to throw in the Malcolm factor in this. And the case
in a
that we were talking about was the New York 21 case, an epic case with the Black Panther Party, epic case targeting one of the most feared chapters of the Black Panther Party, the New York chapter, and it's a very important pivotal moment in that line of walk. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I want you to continue.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for stepping in. Okay, so during this case that lasts almost 15 years, there was discovery, what's known as discovery, which meant that the judge demanded that the police department turn over all of its files. And so the files kept on coming in of the ways in which the NYPD had surveilled New Yorkers systematically in and outside of organizations from 1954 to 1972. Millions of files. I'm talking.
And that's not even 20 years.
Yes, this is millions of files, including.
Did you say millions?
Millions.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Of files, surveillance files of New Yorkers, including the NYPD's surveillance of Malcolm X. So in 1985, the judge told the NYPD, oh, and by the way, before the end of the trial, you've lost, and the defendants won. You need to register these records with the Municipal Archive of the City of New York because, quote, New Yorkers have a right to know
That's right.
what the cops are capable of doing and what they have done to their First Amendment rights. All right. So I'm writing a book on the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican counterpart of the Black Panther Party. And I know that these records exist because I find them in the FBI records, which tells you that surveillance is not a federal issue, right? And practice. It can only happen locally. You need local actors to carry out surveillance. So the COINTELPRO people were working closely with the NYPD and the LAPD and the Camden PD and all local PDs. And I had proof of that. So I do a FOIL, a Freedom of Information Law request with the NYPD, asking them for all records pertaining to the Young Lords. And it took me like 7 years of back and forth with the cops on letterhead. And one day I was like, why don't I just walk into the NYPD's headquarters at One Federal Plaza in New York City? I'm from New York and I need to talk sense into these people. We're having this long, decades old communication on snail mail, and we need to speed this up because I need to publish this book and I need these records. They greet me and they say, oh, Professor Fernandez, we know about your suit and your request, and you're going to be very happy with its outcome. We're going to contact you soon and you're going to be very happy. A month goes by, nothing happens. I call them and they were like, oh, yes, absolutely. We're on it. You're going to get a letter soon. Literally 4 months later, I get a letter that says that they're going to dismiss my request on a technicality. I was pissed, angry, and I literally borrowed money, hired a lawyer, and sued the hell out of them just because I was angry. And then the New York Times came knocking at my door because I was the first person to sue for these handshoe files after the judge had requested that the NYPD deposit these files with the Municipal Archive of the City of New York for safekeeping, for history. So many people had requested these files, and they had gotten rejected or ignored by the NYPD, but no one did anything about it. So listen, it's a long story. It's an even longer story. We lost. So we lost. After 2 years, the judge said, I'm going to have to dismiss this case because we've asked the NYPD to do everything. I've had them take photographs of everywhere they looked. I've had them swear that they looked and that they couldn't find the records. What the hell else am I supposed to do? We've been at it and there's no movement forward. It seems that they've been lost. So I'm going to have to dismiss the case. We walk out of the courtroom and my lawyer turns to me and says, Professor Fernandez, we tried. And I was like, we tried? These bastards didn't lose over 1 million files. They're just keeping them because they don't want them released to the public.
Right. That's right.
We go to New York One, which is like the CNN of New York City. And Dean Meminger, who was the Bronx beat guy when I was growing up, he's now in Manhattan doing these big stories. I talk to him and, tell him that I watched him often growing up. And he says, he interviews me and my attorney. And then he says, you know what? The police commissioner is having a press conference in 2 hours. I'm going to go and ask about your papers. And that was it. He cross-examined the commissioner. Of course, it helped that this was at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement and the hell that was breaking out in Ferguson. So there was pressure on the police to account for its behavior. And literally like 2 weeks later, so this was all over the news. I got calls. I was in the Dominican Republic. Like after I talked to Dean Meminger on New York One, I left to the Dominican Republic. And when I got to the Dominican Republic, my phone was 3 hours later, 4 hours later, my phone was ringing off the hook because I was all over New York One talking about the Handshoe files. So some politician must have called the police and said, it's time to release these records. Their lawyers called my lawyer, and I was asked to identify the body of documents. And here were over 1 million surveillance records, including the NYPD surveillance of Malcolm X. And these records have been used in films, in the latest films on Malcolm X. So that's my story on the Handshoe files. Of course, the police is vindictive as hell. Yes. So they purged the Young Lords papers, the ones that I wanted. All the Black Panther papers are there. Surveillance, everybody's papers, including Malcolm X's, are there. But the Young Lords papers have huge gaps. They hit them because they hate me for having pinned their butts to the wall. But we won. This was a victory for our side. And you can go look at these records now at the Municipal Archive of the City of New York and see the machinations of the police. This is insane dictatorial surveillance before the NSA.
And it's interesting when the way that you describe it, because you're saying that it seems like the police during that time knew that that surveillance violated the law, and they violated the law anyway with impunity. And that leads us to the Mumia Abu Jamal case. And there was a recent ruling that was based on newly found evidence. And what always confuses me about this is, and can you correct me if I'm wrong on the facts or the information, that years, like decades after the original case, the current prosecutor finds boxes of evidence that were supposed to be turned over to the defense in the Mumia Abu Jamal case that just happened to be there. And in one of those boxes, one of the key witnesses is asking the then prosecutor, right, the prosecutor during the time of the case,
for money.
And that seems like it would be relevant evidence that was clearly in the possession of the police, but not given to the defense. They requested a hearing, and that hearing for new trial or dismissal was denied. Can you explain to me what happened in this?
So you can't make this up, and I'm glad that Baba Saeed is here. The absurdity of this denial shocks the conscience, really. So you are absolutely right. One of the records, and there were many that were found 30 some odd years after the fact. One of those is a handwritten letter by the star witness, Robert Chobert. This is the star witness of the prosecutor. In it, he asks the prosecutor, "Where's my money? I have been trying to reach you for some time and I cannot find you. I need my money," suggesting that his testimony was bribed. Another cache of documents found in these boxes clearly demonstrate that another key witness, Cynthia White, who was a sex worker, was being protected by the then prosecutor, Joe McGill. And he was writing to the courtrooms across the Northeastern Corridor where she had open cases. And he's asking other prosecutors to stop everything. Do not make any decision on Cynthia White until you talk to me. In one of these documents, it is clear that she has gotten arrested for threatening somebody. And she's immediately released because the prosecutor, Joe McGill, intervenes. So she's allowed to exercise her profession as a sex worker unperturbed by the cops, but she's also facing over 20 years in prison for outstanding crimes.
Mhm.
And she doesn't serve a day in prison. Again, suggesting that she got preferential treatment for fingering Mumia.
And
The
none of
judge,
this is known at the time of the trial.
oh, and all of this was suppressed, has been suppressed for 41 years. It's approximately 41 years, maybe 36, 37 since the moment they were found in January, on January 2019, in January 2019. So the current judge, who's a Black woman, her name is Lucretia Clemens of the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. So what's her argument for dismissing Mumia's claim to the Brady violation? And the Brady violation is a Supreme Court, refers to a Supreme Court case which says that it is a constitutional violation to suppress potentially exculpatory evidence, evidence of innocence, or at least evidence that would lead to a questionable guilt.
Doubt.
Right? So there's reasonable doubt. This information, if given to the defense attorneys, and if the jury would have heard that this was happening, they would have been like, well, there's reasonable doubt that they're saying a lie, that they are being pressured or bought, that their testimonies are being bought. She says, the judge that was hearing Mumia's most recent appeal, that even if the jury would have known about this bribery, Mumia would have been convicted anyway. So she's essentially playing God and determining for the jury what they can and cannot hear, should or should not have heard. And she's saying, oh, if they would have heard it, they would still have convicted Mumia anyway, which is absolutely false, because Mumia was convicted in the absence of material evidence. He was convicted on the basis of testimonies. And
Right.
these were two of the lead witnesses in the case. So that was the logic. And that is what is known as materiality. That this was not material to the eventual conviction. That this is like unimportant information that would not have influenced the final verdict in the case. And there's other stuff, but I want you to respond because it is quite outrageous.
But is this like the same theme that we talked about before, like where the legal institutions, like the police department, in the case of getting the files that we talked about in the first segment, and in this case, you have the judge, who's a Black woman judge, who looks at evidence that would seem to be like obvious, right? That it would at least have it would potentially have some influence, right? Like if someone's like, where's my money? Where's my money? What was he getting paid for? Like what? And that's not given to, and the other one saying, well, knowing that there were a series of charges against her, and it could have been like putting a gun to her head at testimony for the prosecution. Like the prosecution literally had the power of life over the person who was testifying. And for the defense not to know that, for it not to be material, it seems to defy
Logic.
and even and even more basically when we're talking about the rules of law and fairness that are assumed, right? Like if you find a Brady violation, then that should be respected. If you find exculpatory evidence, that should be respected. Here, they're saying you can
Find
find
prejudicial
exculpatory evidence.
stuff with the selection of the jury that should be respected. We go on. There's a long list of stuff.
It's almost like the
this is the
rules.
recent stuff that where we at. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. I just had to say.
And when you're looking at the rules don't apply, almost in the same way, like today, we heard about the Tennessee state legislators that were thrown out of the state legislature in Tennessee for reasons that go against precedent, go against all of the other assumed laws. They disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of people, and whereas white people in positions where they've committed actual crimes, where they've done things that were harmful, where they've committed potential sexual assault, they weren't removed because there was care about their constituents. Is there a running theme through all of this that that the reason why we have Black Lives Matter, that's a statement, is because it seemed like they don't?
Yeah, the law does not uphold or is not upheld in the cases of certain people, like political prisoners, who are distinguished because they actually expose the bankruptcy of the state and of the Constitution and the double standards of American democracy and the ways in which race is essentially the biggest card against you if you're going before a court. We all know that just because you're declared guilty in America as a Black person doesn't mean a damn thing. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that you're guilty. You were declared guilty, but that means very little. And I think it's important to take a step back, because this is really not a case of an exception. It is a kind of exception because there is something known as the Mumia exception, that precedent does not apply in the case of Mumia Abu Jamal, a very, very political case involving a veteran Black Panther and imprisoned radio journalist accused of killing a white police officer. So a very political case that has been used by politicians to ascend the political ladder. All of the politicians in Pennsylvania, for example, have campaigned on Mumia's execution. So the state is invested in upholding this decision. However, you don't get to mass incarceration with a lawful justice system. Right. You can only get to mass incarceration with the breaking of laws and the violation of people's rights, left and right. Just recall that the majority of people in prison are in prison for victimless crimes, right? That is unprecedented in American history. The people who were in prison in America before the civil rights movement were only people who had engaged in violent crime where there were victims, and not just any violent crime, but excessively violent crime. There were only 300,000 people in prison in America in 1970. And now we have 3.2 million people in prison in America. So how do you get that jump, that exponential jump? You're going to have to break the rules and make a lot of exceptions, and remake the rules every day. So Mumia's case is really a microcosm of everything that's wrong with the criminal justice system. And the question is, okay, so, but we understand this Black woman who, by the way, is a member of a family where there was a lynching in the South?
That's right.
So her grandfather was lynched in the South. And so you would think that she sees the echoes of white supremacy in this case. A situation in which the original judge in the case, Albert Sabo, was overheard saying by a court stenographer, quote, "I'm going to help them fry the N-word."
That's right.
Referring to how the original judge, Albert Sabo, was going to instruct the prosecution, right? A third of the police involved in collecting evidence in this case were later convicted and jailed for corruption and mishandling evidence and implanting evidence to obtain convictions. And they were arrested.
Hold on. Wait, can you repeat that? Wait, because this is, again, a lot of people don't even know who Mumia Abu Jamal is, what that case was. You're saying 1/3 of the police officers who were responsible for getting evidence, 1/3 of the police officers who were responsible for getting evidence were later convicted on corruption charges, which included planting evidence?
Yes, 1/3. They were convicted and they did jail time, including the lead investigator, Giordano.
Come on.
Giordano. So not only that, okay, so there's that, but Mumia is guilty of having survived a horrible case of police brutality. Mumia arrives at the crime scene, is immediately shot. When other police officers come to the crime scene, they pummel him into a nearby pole. Mumia's face is completely disfigured. He's essentially left for dead and allowed to sit in a paddy wagon for 30 minutes before they drive him to the front of the emergency room and literally throw him in the street. They don't even take him into the emergency room. The cops literally throw him in the street, and the doctors and nurses have to come outside of the emergency room and pick him up from the street. This is a clear case of racist, white supremacist police brutality gone wrong because their victim survived.
Wow.
So these are the echoes of white supremacy in this case that this woman, Black woman, should have seen. And so many of us are crestfallen, depressed, and angry because we thought.
Well, wait a minute, Joanna, wait a minute, hold up, right? I'm scratching my head. Now where does woman come from? Because there was a Black judge before that, right? What happened to him?
Well, this is a very important question you're asking. Well, first of all, Lucretia Clemens was appointed by Governor Tom Wolf. So she's an appointee of the top dog in the Democratic Party of Pennsylvania at the time. So she has to essentially carry water for the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party is infamous in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania for campaigning against Mumia Abu Jamal and using his case to win votes by deploying the image of Mumia, the cop killer, in white districts to essentially get fear going around white voters so that they'll vote on the law and order ticket. Okay, so the only judge in the history of this case that has ever sided with Mumia is a judge by the name of Leon Tucker. Leon Tucker essentially wrote a really eloquent decision saying, you know what, kids, there was judicial bias in this case. And we have the responsibility as judges to recuse ourselves, to say, no, I cannot hear this case because there's a conflict of interest. What's the conflict of interest? Oh, in the case of one judge, he was named Man of the Year by the Fraternal Order of Police, the same institution that tried to execute Mumia and that's committed to Mumia's conviction. And the Fraternal Order of Police funded the judge's political campaign. So Leon Tucker said that judge should have recused himself because this is a clear conflict of interest. What happened to Leon Tucker? Well, Leon Tucker was the head of the Philadelphia Criminal Division within the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. So he was the supervising judge of the Philadelphia Criminal Division of the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. He, as soon as he sided with Mumia, as soon as he ruled in favor of Mumia, he was vanquished to the Commerce Case Management Program within the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. So I'm sure that Lucretia.
Wait. Now what that? Now you talking to regular folks off the streets of Newark, New Jersey, and New York City and whatnot. I ain't vanquished. I think of Star Trek and stuff like that. What do you mean they vanquished him?
He was disappeared. Essentially, he was demoted. He was demoted to hearing cases involving money, not people. So yeah, that was his punishment.
And this was a Black Republican judge, by the way, too.
Yeah, exactly. He was no friend necessarily of Black people, but he had some semblance of principles.
Democratic principle, yes.
Mm-hmm. He saw violations here and he was like, yeah, this is effed up. And there is a constitutional violation here that we have to uphold. And I grant Abu Jamal and his attorneys relief on the issue of judicial bias. So Lucretia Clemens, it doesn't end there. Who replaced Leon Tucker? Lucretia Clemens. So Lucretia Clemens replaced Leon Tucker as the supervising judge of the Philadelphia Criminal Division within the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. So what this means is that the law is politics by another name. She was going to have to write, as she did, a 39-page mumbo jumbo decision that justified the unjustifiable, and that's exactly what she did.
Just reading the document to give you a headache.
Yeah,
really I only read 7 pages and I couldn't read it anymore.
No, absolutely.
Because now, what about, like, it seems like they do this simply because they can get away with it and there's no pressure on the other way, right? There are no protests that are massive for Mumia. Like, in other words, it doesn't seem like like people are coming out in large enough numbers to garner press. Is there an appeals process that is possible?
There is. You're absolutely right, by the way, that there was a massive movement in the 1990s that stopped the execution of Mumia Abu Jamal. Mumia Abu Jamal is alive because people in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands marched in Philadelphia, in New York City, in New Jersey, in Washington, D.C., and around the world. But that movement has since subsided. And we need to rebuild that movement if we are going to get Mumia out of prison.
And what you're saying is that a movement like that isn't just for Mumia, but it actually is for everybody who suffers under the criminal justice system, who gets reacted to in that way. And it's so ironic where Donald Trump is arraigned on Tuesday, and they're talking about political prosecutions, and he's looking at himself as a political prisoner. And when you have
but listen to this. I got to throw this in, and we got to come back to this on another front at another time. As Trump is being indicted right here in New Jersey, our lovely Democratic governor Phil Murphy, the progressive, is signing an elections reform law bill, right, that dismisses the behavior that Trump is being indicted for as being serious in the name of election reform.
Wow! In the name of election reform.
Name of this is Jersey. There's a reason why they call Jersey the Soprano State. It ain't about some old Italians. It's beyond it. It's how things get done in Jersey. And that,
So in other words, New Jersey's trying to make it legal to pay off prostitutes with your election money.
Yeah, because that's what they do. Now, a lot of them do that.
It's like, oh,
Trump should have been gone with.
Like,
I don't want to get off topic, but Trump should have been gone when he picked up the phone in a very cavalier, find me 17,000 votes, right, in Georgia so we can get this stuff out of the way.
That's fair, but like but when we're getting to this case, right, like the randomness, it seems that Trump can say he's a political prisoner, and there are whole sorts of people who believe him, but we actually have cases of actual political prisoners in the United States. What can we do to here's a question: are there other political prisoners in the United States? Are there other political prisoners in the United States? What can be done? What is being done? Like, is it hopeless?
Well, there's Jamil Al-Amin is one of them, right? Jamil Al-Amin is one of the most revered civil rights leaders of the 20th century. He changed his name from H. Rap Brown to Jamil Al-Amin. This is a beloved organizer who was organizing in urban centers around gang truces and nurturing our communities from the time he became active with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, to the moment he was arrested, falsely framed by the police at around the time of 9/11. After 9/11, they had their eye on him for a while. And used the atmosphere of the post 9/11 moment to put him in prison. Mumia and Jamil Al-Amin are two of the political prisoners of that other period, right? People who were framed, who were persecuted, policed, surveilled for being Black Power leaders and organizers. These were the people that COINTELPRO warned about, that we don't want messiahs who can inspire and lead the Black community. Those people need to be killed or jailed forever. That's literally what the COINTELPRO papers said. So that's Mumia Abu Jamal and Jamil Al-Amin. There are others, but there are a whole bunch of political prisoners sitting in jail right now out of the protests that are happening in Atlanta against Cop City. Young people who are protesting the fact that
charged with domestic terrorism.
Tell us about this, please. Tell us about this, Baba Said, because people need to know this.
There is a vast forest area, beautiful forest area, and I can't pronounce the name, begins with a W, of the indigenous people who were over that area before their genocide, of course, right? That some land defenders had been trying to protect for some time because it was being marked for a $90 million campus to train police in the putting down of major protests. Can't make this stuff up, right? So these defenders all of a sudden come under attack by a combination of law enforcement forces, local police and the Georgia State Police, and they wind up killing one. Literally shooting one occupier 13 times by the man by the name of Manuel Tehran. They call him Tortuguita, right? And some later on, some other protests and some solidarity activity came under attack by the police, and a number of activists involved with that have been charged with domestic terrorism, right? And that's, if that doesn't sound familiar, it certainly ought to. right? And so the need for a whole new wave of some urgent solidarity to prevent another, stepping forward of conscientious people around what's right and just going into prison for a long period of time is now. And the thing that just we lifted up the embarrassment and the disgust of this African American judge in Mumia's case, right? The class question is real, running through all of these things. Tyree Nichols, these black officers, who beat this brother to death, who's literally in walking distance from his home, running and crying for his mother. If you can't, right? And told to do so by the white police officer who's on the scene, who gets treated different, even in that kind of scenario, right? And there's all these black, neoliberal apologists in these equations that need to be, replaced, quite frankly, by a new wave of activists, who are one on the ground in the streets, but also should also get into positions of influence to replace these kind of folks. Quite frankly,
and
right?
Here's an important
that's
question.
The call of the day, straight up.
Actually, Zaid, I'm just going to ask you just briefly about that to reiterate. There's always a call for representation, right? We saw this in the last presidential race. There was a need to have Black women as vice president, right? We see that there's representation that we call for in government. We want Black judges. We want Black prosecutors. You're saying that push in and of itself,
it can't just be Black,
is misguided. You can't say we want.
See, this is Newark too. Now we're in Newark, New Jersey. We don't had our share of folks who have stood in the way of what we needed to get done for a long time. So being Black ain't enough.
So if you're saying that, if representation
matters, but representation has to be qualitative representation.
But what should we call? In other words, until we say something different, we're going to get the same. I think that what it seemed like, and
thank you, Johanna put in the chat for us. I always pronounce it wrong. The Walini folks. It's the most from the Muskegee people. Thank you for that. Yeah, I could not. I've always had trouble pronouncing that.
And so is that
that's in reference to Cop City. That's the area that they once populated, right? The Walini people of what is now that part of Georgia, just on the outskirts of Atlanta.
Okay, so
we need to do a whole segment on that. I've been trying to get some folks on to do a whole segment on that.
So what you're pointing out is that many of the people who murdered that man, the police who murdered that man in Memphis, were Black, even though we called for more Black police officers. Many of the people you're saying who are attacking the activists, possibly killing at least one of the activists in Atlanta.
The elected leadership, the mayor of Atlanta, and some of that, the elected leadership, they're all in with this.
Okay, so you have Black
the
leadership.
Game of playing the safe political game is that you can't go against the police in politics.
And so you're saying that it's not just about having representation, but what?
Qualitative representation, right? And qualitative representation that's a part of a people's vision to transform systems that are oppressive and make them and turn them into something else.
But I'm sure that Kamala Harris, I'm sure that
Kamala Harris is not the goofy dude from Indiana that was riding with Trump. But so she's not that, thankfully. But one of the first things she did was stand up in front of Black and brown people and who are trying to figure out how to escape terror in their own country, driven by American policies in their own country. Don't come. Right? A woman who's got an immigrant background herself on both sides of her family. It was disgusting.
And she's a top cop from where she comes from.
Madam DA, Don't listen
She's
to that,
like,
right? Put on
she's
locked up a whole lot of folks. That's how she pushed herself up.
she's the law and order,
class.
you know,
That's
queen
right.
of her town. I think it's important, especially as regards the police, to identify like what is the role of the police in society. We think that the role of the police is to establish safety, but a cop will stop a crime in progress literally once in 1,000 years. The statistic is like mind-blowing. So the cops are not there to protect our safety. The cops, if you study them, first emerged to return escaped enslaved people.
That's right.
Back to the plantation.
That's right.
So that means that from the go, this institution has in its DNA white supremacy and violence against Black people. That's how
keeping the Negro in his place.
To keep the Negro in his place, in her place. And when the police forces flourished in the United States in the late 19th century, their role was first and foremost to stop strikes, worker strikes that were happening across the country. The cops are there at the end of the day to protect private property and to keep neighborhood boundaries sealed. So that's why you go to Harlem, you go to Camden, you go to Newark, and you go to communities of color, and there are cops everywhere trying to keep people at the bottom of society, the working class, poor people, in their place and away from other neighborhoods. That's the role of the police. And if you are a police, you have to carry out that duty or they're going to kick you out. So Black and Latino officers, in many ways, are forced to prove themselves to their white peers. And so you have white and Latino officers who, in order to make good with their brothers and sisters, they go the extra mile. And they, take names. That's just the facts. What you have is a managerial class of people of color who are better able to police the system and keep stability in the face of inequality better than white people. That's why Obama was one of the most effective presidents in the history of the country. He came on at a moment when American power and American hegemony was on the decline because of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We were the laughing stock of the world. And he was elected and gave American hegemony a facelift. But you know what was one of the last things Obama did? Literally, his last act in the president was to bomb the hell out of Afghanistan. So, and it's better when a Black
what he did to Libya as a gimme for Hillary Clinton, and destroyed Africa's most generous nation and most Pan-Africanist nation in the process too.
There you go.
In the name of regime change. He didn't come up with anything different to break away from the racist imperialist doctrine of regime change. He rode with it and took it to a place and gave it perfect cover because he was Black.
He's Black. He's legit.
So what you're saying, right? And what I seems to be, it's not that representation matters in that way. It is that the representation isn't on phenotype, it has to be ideological. Like, as in, if you do not have an ideology that questions systems of oppression and pushes back against it, then is representation worthless?
And it also has to be driven by a movement that has ideological maturity to hold people accountable when they betray those movements when they were put in power.
Because if it's just about representation, I'll choose someone who believes that what I believe, and you got your representation, and they'll continue to do what I want them to do, right?
Absolutely.
That the structures don't change. if
Right.
you're talking about representation, if representation isn't matched with, if the representational change does not reflect an ideological change, as in a change that questions structures of inequality, structures of capitalism, structures of white supremacy. If these things are not rooted in the change, then all you've done was reform. All you've done was have the
Window
same
dress.
thing under a different mask.
All you have is not just reform, very little reform. What you have is
Window
the
dress.
legitimacy. You're legitimizing
Right.
inequality and the system.
We used to
There's
call that window dressing.
window dressing. Absolutely. This is something that Baba Said referenced a minute ago. There's also the thing called class, that Barack Obama faces racism. He faced racism in Congress and in the Senate. They didn't allow him to elect or select a Supreme Court nominee twice, right?
Right.
He was barred. That would not have happened with a white president. That would not have happened with a white president.
And
So
in the process, they gutted the Voting Rights Act in the process.
he experienced racism, but ultimately, Barack Obama is part of the ruling class. His class interest override his interest as a black man who experiences racism, because he was ultimately willing to establish policy to protect capitalism and structures of inequality and American imperialism over any thing that would have gotten us even reforms on the issue of racism. So there are class differences among Black people, and those make all the difference. Lucretia Clemens is protecting her class interests when she rules against Mumia Abu Jamal. But so are all of the mayors who rule over the Black mayors and Latino mayors who rule over urban America, right? It is under Black mayors that mass incarceration came to fruition. It was Black people at the helm in the 1980s and 90s in cities. And it was they who deployed police forces and law and order more effectively, perhaps, than white mayors.
Riding behind a dog by the name of William Jefferson Clinton.
There we go.
So, yeah, and you're talking about the 1994 crime bill, which was largely supported by...
I'm talking about Bill Clinton on his way into the White House with a stated agenda of taking the Democratic Party to the right to reclaim white male presence and privilege.
And I think, Jonathan, you were going to say that the Congressional Black Caucus supported the crime bill, hook, line, and sinker.
Right. And so did Black mayors who called for it when people were scared of the crack epidemic.
Signed on April 24th, 1990, whatever it was, on Mumia's birthday. With Maureen Faulkner in the audience.
We're getting ready to end the segment in terms of...
Let me just ask this question, because I want everybody to get this also, Jonathan, before we answer the ritual question. First, I want to say that this is Johanna's book. We got to have her back on this. This is a mammoth, very important book on the Young Lord Party. We all know lords. They're dear friends and comrades. I just had Felipe in Newark a little while ago, Johanna, on another front, right? These are two books that Johanna had personally worked on with Mumia, right? You see, I'm trying to get this right, The Writing on the Wall, right? And Have Black Lives Ever Mattered, right? So, I mean, these are things that we want to lift up. But the question I wanted you to expand, because not many of us actually get to see Mumia beyond being able to write to him, right? He has had several major health challenges. Let everybody know just how he is actually doing now in terms of his health and his well-being. We know his spirit is incredibly resilient, but how is he doing?
So Mumia had like triple bypass surgery. Like, most people don't realize that, but that is some serious procedure. I mean, they have to take your heart out of your body. Prison is no place for anybody who's aging in America. And he needs to come home. It's Mumia and a prison population that was imprisoned in the 1980s and that's aging. Like, America is responsible for cruelty against the aged in prison. That's what's happening in these prisons. He's all right given the situation. Mumia is determined to live, so he walks every day miles. He walks like 4 miles every day. But the food he gets is garbage. He's continuing to suffer with a horrific skin problem, which is the product of water that is infected. We know that waters in prisons across the country are poisoned. They're lead poisoned. And it's the only thing that prisoners have access to drink, but also to bathe in. So he's doing well considering. You said earlier, Jonathan, that this is not about Mumia. Mumia's case is famous worldwide. People know about it, but there isn't a movement to accompany this case right now. But if there is a break around Mumia's case, it's going to break open a conversation of the problems with the criminal justice system. It'll deal a blow big time internationally. It'll be a huge embarrassment to the system. And it will definitely lead to the release of many, 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 many more people beyond Mumia Abu Jamal.
Well, thank you so much we will definitely have to get you back on the show. Before we end though, the final question. We always ask the question about hip hop and what you're listening to. So who's your favorite hip hop artist or group, living or dead, or who are you just rocking with now?
I'm still with Rapper's Delight. That's what I grew up with in the Bronx in the 1980s. And that's where my heart is.
Okay.
You had to be a kid back in the 80s, girl.
It was all the rage. Okay. And it's what defined my my identity growing up.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and look forward to having you on again.
Thank you. Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
I'll be checking in on you.
Take care. So Zaid, a lot of people don't know where Black is Beautiful comes from. People have heard the term Black is Beautiful, but people don't know about Black is Beautiful. So Zaid, can you do the introduction for this?
Actually, I was going to ask you to use the trailer as an introduction because I think the trailer will do it better. Right, that's one of the things that we can. Are we in a position to do that? If we can't, then
we
I
can't do that right now. But
I'll bring in Louise.
Well, let's start, and then we'll bring in the trailer. Yeah, like that. Way to let me know right before they're on. So
that's why I said it to you, little brother.
Yeah, I know it's gonna have be up there, but let them do the introduction of the guest that we have on, the historic nature of it, and why Black is Beautiful is important.
First, we did not expect, but something that happened to us that has all of our hearts heavy. One of the architects of this very movement that we're about to talk about just left us for the land of the ancestors several days ago. Kwame Braithwaite, who was Cinque's uncle and the little brother of one of our major forces and a huge influence in my own personal life, Ilombe Brath, right? Just passed away just a few days ago. So that's a fresh cloud that is over this. But one of the things that has happened, and Ilombe left us before he could actually see it. But I'm glad that Kwame and Numza Cinque's mother and Ilombe's children and the rest of his family really got to see a renewed and very important appreciation of that pioneer. See, white folks in America ain't the only ones with pioneers. We got our pioneers too, you dig, right? And when it comes to this whole question of Black consciousness, question of the right for us, the rightful need for our people to center ourselves as African people with our own aesthetics and our own standard of beauty, right? All of that comes from, you know, some very bold places of struggle, right? And these children of Garveyites, right, in the greater Harlem area, pull that together before, you know, that language got popular in the late 60s, right? Louise Dente, who was an amazing teacher and culture worker, who had the courage to actually hire a crazy person like me to actually work in a teaching setting for her several years ago. But she had a wonderful performance ensemble called Joy Performing Workshop, took that whole experiment and transformed it into a show called Cultural Caravan, and recognizing the emerging historical moment that was last year, which was the 60th anniversary of the Grandassa, movement beginning, and turned it into her first documentary film. And this film has gotten critical acclaim from all over the world, right? And it's out of showing that is coming up, and it shows how Cinque's father and uncle and that whole crew called AJAZ, the African Jazz Arts Society and Studios, pulled together this movement that would later blow up in what we call Black is Beautiful, or the Black Arts Movement. But those seeds necessarily, grew out of, the Garvey legacy in Harlem that they upheld in a very important way, coming out of the late 50s in the early 60s. So I'm very proud to, in fact, and Louise was the first person to throw me on the stage. I owe this sister so much. I'm very proud of her and what she has done, and how consistent she's been. She's like a one-woman army when it comes to getting things done. And I know Alombe would be very proud of what's going on with his children. And this is baby boy right here, right? I think he was holding up the Alombe Brath Foundation and keeping his father's work and his legacy and the value and the impact of his legacy alive. We can't talk about Pan-Africanism coming out of New York without talking about three people: Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and Alombe Brath, right? So I'm very proud to have both of you with us. You got it queued up? Go ahead and run it. Or do you? Right? Because you went silent on me. While you're trying to get it queued up, Louise, tell us how you got it?
Got it. And now I'm unhooking myself. So
okay,
this is the truth.
The African Jazz Art Society in the Studios was a powerful organization that evolved out of the Garvey movement.
When we organized the Jazz Art Society, we were primarily focused on producing jazz concerts in the Bronx.
The one place where we have made real progress is with hair, where Black women are totally liberated in terms of hair.
We didn't know how this idea would be accepted, because at that time, the idea of Black women wearing their hair in its natural state was not very popular. That was the beginning of what some people call the Black Arts Movement, some call the Black is Beautiful movement, but it was a movement of the aesthetical showcasing of the Black experience, the Black aesthetics, which had not really been featured since the 1920s.
Back then, growing up, Black was not in, it was not in style to be Black. My mother used to say, how are you gonna get a job now with that nappy hair? You know what I mean? So people really didn't believe that you would fit into corporate America and things like that.
And when the Grandassa gave me a worldview more of what's going on in Africa. But all these young girls now who wear their hair in various straits of curl, kinky, half curl, half kinky, half one day this way, one day, it's because they have the freedom to wear their hair in any kind of way and the knowledge of knowing that they look darn good.
Elambe Brath, Kwame Braithwaite, Chris Esmondizes Hall, Jimmy Abu, Frank Adu, Bob Gums.
We would like to shine a spotlight on a group of brothers who came together in 1956 to form an organization that was later known as the African Jazz Art Society Studios in the Bronx, New York. AJAZ, pioneers of the Black is Beautiful movement.
All right, so talk to us about this film.
Wow. You're muted, Louise. She's steady rocking. We can hear a word she's saying. You're muted. You got to unmute. CQ, you're both muted.
Oh,
you're muted now, Jonathan.
Oh, and one thing also, whenever you're not talking, just put yourself on mute. Yeah. So right now,
are we?
Hey, there you go, Louise. There you go.
I'm wearing using external mic, and no. Okay, so let me again thank you both so much for having us. It's a pleasure and an honor. I know Brother Zaid had mentioned that we were trying to get on the show a few months ago, but thank goodness we're on now. Real quick, I just want to say this project was a labor of love, and it actually started several years ago at the African Poetry Theater, where I met the late, great Chris Asimedisi Hall, who is a phenomenal artist, cartoonist, lyricist. And at that time, he wanted, I was going to his house actually to really document his work. He didn't tell me at the time that he was critically ill, but he wanted me to document his work, what he did. And as we talked, he talked about AJAZ. At the time, I didn't know what AJAZ was, but he mentioned about being part of AJAZ and his relationship to Elambe Brath and so forth. And Chris unfortunately did not live to see the completion of the project, but Elambe Brath at that time and Kwame Braithwaite were very gracious to come to Queens and be part of to talk about their relationship, particularly Elambe, with Chris Asimedisi Hall, and in addition to that, Kwame had brought some wonderful pictures, of which we saw some of them in it. So that was 2008, something like that. Moving on further, a couple of years later, it was in 2018, which is a few years ago. I was I reintroduced to a sister. Many people know her as Queen Mother Black Rose, who was actually the oldest Grandassa model. And she was talking about, I had invited her on the show to talk about her, the anniversary of the Grandassa Models, which was 57 years at that time. And as she spoke about the AJAZ and the AJAZ being coming out of the AJAZ developing the Grandassa Models and everything, from my conversation with her, and then later on, I said, Louise, there's no such thing as an accident. I've got to document this. So I went to Cinque and Bob Gums, who unfortunately we lost Bob a few months ago. And I told them my interest. They were very excited about it. And from 2018 onward, I've been working on putting it all together using rare footage from my program that I had shot over the years, plus conversations from others. And you'll see conversations from you said Bob Law, A. Peter Bailey, who else? Viola Plummer. Who else? You saw Ann Tripp in there, who was a Grandassa model, and many others. And so this opportunity gives people a chance who may have never heard of the A-Jazz or the contributions they made to find out, a new generations to find out who A-Jazz was, or African Jazz Art Society and Studio, which is what the acronym stands for. So this particular program is an opportunity to educate people about the contributions that these dynamic African American men have made to society. And so that's why I'm very proud and honored to be part of that. So I'm going to pause and give you if there's any questions or anything else.
I wanted to take a minute too, because we were going to try and Bob was supposed to come on, right? So several months ago, and he had some tech issues. We were going to have him on, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to get on. And of course, shortly after that, he also left us for the land of the ancestors. Bob was that second voice in the that talk about how the brothers came together back in the late 50s, and he was also a very important writer. And his book on Black is Beautiful from some years ago is a collector's item if you can find it. And of course, Kwame was the photographer in the mix, and his photographs were put together and put into a book finally. That was the basis for the resurfacing and this new appreciation of that pioneering work that he and his brother and that crew did back then, and that I've made personal, teaching capital out of that book. I've passed that book on to several of the women in my family who I love, my daughter, my granddaughter, and several others. I don't even have my own personal copy because I just keep that moving, because it's that important to our people, and particularly important to the beauty and the dignity of Black women. So I just wanted to just put a pin on that and acknowledge that we lost Brother Gums, and we also just lost Brother Kwame, right? Cinque, come on in, talk about your dad, your mom, your uncle, the crew, and why the Alombe Brath Foundation necessarily had to jump all over Louise's film and help get it out.
Well, I mean, part of the whole thing with the Alombe Brath Foundation, when Louise first came by with the project, of course, my uncle was still alive and well, so to speak, and Bob and I were there. And one of the things that the Alombe Brath Foundation was doing was trying to keep up the legacy and projects. Now, before my father really got sick, I know one of the things that he had wanted to do was he was trying to do a book about the Black is Beautiful movement and the start of the Black arts movement involving A-Jazz. So it was work that, so, Bob and my Uncle Kwame being part of the foundation, those were things we were sort of working on anyway. We had already had, even before the museum, the big popular exhibits of my uncle's Black is Beautiful photography, we had some exhibits locally, the Bronx Music Heritage Center and places like that, Boricua College, with A-Jazz ephemera and things from the past, old flyers, paintings, and just the work that those brothers had put out back in the late 50s and 60s that they had put out. So it was all, so when Louise came on talking about the project, it was just only natural that we was like, yeah, this is gonna save us some work. Louise is gonna, put it on it and do it. And so basically, yeah, we said, yeah, let's get this project off the ground. Let's get it rolling. And then that was basically the start of that journey. But Baba Saeed, I wanted to mention one thing I wanted to mention when you was talking about the book. The book that you mentioned is right here. It's called The Harlem Cultural and Political Movements, 1960 to 1970, from Malcolm X to Black. So Cletus Smith, who was also an A-Jazz member, did the book. Bob Gums Press Company produced the book.
Right.
So Gums and Thomas, they're the ones who produced the book, but it's actually another A-Jazz member. who came on later on. His name is Cletus Smith, and he's also a photographer,
Right.
just like you know, Kwame or even Bob's. I mean, heck, if we look at the actual primary data from Ajaz, we'll see Bob listed as a photographer also, even when Bob ended up going to the military, and he was a photographer there. They tried to, of course, get my father, and there's a cartoon out about that, but there was no way my father was serving in nobody's war. And basically, they still tried to get him. They brought him back in for the psych evaluation. They was asking him all sorts of questions, and he was like, no. Then he came and he told my uncle, Kwame, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to answer those questions. Kwame got out. Then they came to Bob, and they tried, but they wasn't going for it. They're like, no, we drafted you. We taking you. So Bob ended up having to go to
they love telling that story too.
Yeah. Bob said he wasn't able to get it out of that. But you know, really what a lot of people don't know, the actual first book that really Ajaz had done out, they were telling their own story all along, even before this. In 1963, my father put out a book called Color Us Colored, which is even rarer to get than that book right there. Actually, you can, if you want to pay a lot of money, you can get the Harlem Cultural Political Movement, but you can't get Color Us Colored unless you add certain libraries. And then it's under key. You can't even take it in a room. You have to look at it while it's there. But what ended up happening about 2021, the University of Mississippi, under a professor named Thomas Aiello, took Color Us Colored and expanded upon it and came up with a book called Elambe Brath, The Artistic Activism, which is now a history book and required reading at the University of Mississippi. And it's interesting that they use the artistic activism, because a lot of people don't realize this is a known term. And artistic activism means a dynamic practice combining the creative power of the arts to move us emotionally with the strategic planning of activism necessary to bring about social change. And that's what Ajaz is. That's what Ajaz did. You know what I mean? They use
and so many people do not or have not really, and I'm talking about folks who I know, you know, my generation and the generation before me, you know, alone, your father's politics was so paramount that his art was often overlooked. That was an important piece.
Yeah, oh no, definitely. Like a lot of people know his work through the Patrice Lumumba Coalition,
right?
You know, and you know, because as an internationalist, African internationalist organization, it's more international and it's scarier to the forces that be. You know what I mean? You know, that's a watch. But really, the Ajaz and what Ajaz had did was the start. You know what I mean? And you know, of course, my father and uncle both were also members of AMPM, which stands for African Nationalist Pioneer Movement. My father was the director of information for AMPM. My uncle was an officer in there, you know. So
and that was led by whom? And that was led by whom?
Led by the legendary Carlos Cooks. We call him the chief, Carlos Cooks. You know, and actually, you know, I was there when they renamed the street for Carlos Cooks in 168th Street, right outside the Audubon Ballroom with Malcolm X. So, yeah, it was led by Carlos Cooks, who was the inspiration for a number of things that Ajaz would later do.
Yes. Carlos was the bridge.
Yes, exactly.
The bridge from Garvey to the 1960s.
Yes,
and a lot of people don't realize that Carlos Cooks was an Afro. You know, we just had Johanna Fernandez on, right?
Yes, she's the. I've seen that sister. I've read her stuff a lot of times, so I was like, oh, that's cool that she was on. I recognized her.
Both are proud Afro Dominicans.
Yes, that's where I know of her from. Yeah, I was watching. I was like, oh, I know that sister. Yeah, I don't know her, but I know of her work.
She's a fighter too. She ain't no house professor.
Right.
She's a fighter. She's a scrapper. Right. Oh yeah. She was at Brown. We didn't get a chance to talk about this so much. But we got to have her back on, Jonathan. The kind of student she was at Brown University. She was a hellraiser when she was in school, and as a Brown alum, she also fostered and facilitated Brown acquiring the papers of Mumia Abu Jamal.
Wow.
Right. So we've got some places to go yet on our journey to get Mumia out. But
Indeed,
I just want to,
indeed.
the Pan Africanism that's running through all of this, right, is important to appreciate. There's an emerging Pan African consciousness among Afro Latin folks.
Yeah.
That's very profound. I had a tie to someone who's very dear to me, who's got an organization of Afro Latin women that extends from Boston all the way down to Buenos Aires, right? So this reemergence is coming at a time where we really need to look at what it means to build the united fronts that our leaders always call for. So and this Louise gave us a valuable tool with this film. She's being modest. I don't know why she's being so quiet.
Well, Louise covers some of the Afro
Louise ain't
Latino
you're not modeling, Louise.
Look,
right?
Baba Louise covers a little bit of it in her film. She has
quite a bit of the film.
She doesn't directly, but our good brother from the UNIA, she has touch on that in the film for those who haven't seen it.
Yeah. So
and it will be showing in New York at Cooper Union at the Herb Tubelin Design Center of Design and Typography. It's named after Herb Tubelin, who was a big anti-war protester who used flyers in commerce and design to bring attention to social issues.
Yes, thank you. And as you said, it's going to be there. And if it's okay, Zaid, for us to give the address, it's going to be, as Cinque mentioned, it's going to be next Friday, April 14th, from 5:30 to 9:30, in the building, the Lublin building. It's going to be in the Frederick Rose Auditorium, which is located at 41 Cooper Square in Manhattan. And so you can take the 6th train to Astor Place or the RW train to 8th Street. One thing that I will say again is you're encouraged to register, but if you don't, you could still come in. There's only limited seating. Let me also say that there is still a COVID policy. It's a private institution. They only request that people either show at the door their vaccination card for COVID, or if they're not vaccinated, to have at least a PCR test or a rapid test. Okay, a negative, and not something from home. It has to be something generated from an institution, printed. So that's something key, that again, if you're not vaccinated, you bring a PCR test that's negative or a rapid test. So
Louise, tell us how about the journey of the film itself. The film is done.
Yes,
you've done several. You've done several showings in the area. I definitely owe you a showing here in Newark, and I want to talk to both of you about when I want to look at.
Newark is due.
Well, yeah, I'm going through something. I'm going through a rebranding of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee. Right, okay. So that's what's kind of slowing it down a little bit. And the question of the venue is also important because of the film's length. But I got an idea and I got a date and time, that I want to consider. Okay. And I'll talk to y'all after that. All right.
So if that's the case, Baba Zaid, then Louise, you need to follow up with Brother Bilal Hakeem. I got one of his shirts on right here.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to be showing it. And Patterson got a lot of issues right now. What's going on with the brother?
I'm intimately involved in that.
I know. I seen you or watching my little TV. I seen you on there. I spotted you right out there. I seen you.
Yeah. The streets are hot out there, but I want folks to appreciate this. This is Louise is not a filmmaker by training, but she understood the value in the moment.
Well, what it is, as I said, that I've been in TV for goodness. We're about going on our 15th year of TV. And then the transition was kind of a smooth transition because, I've been doing mini documentaries every time I do Cultural Caravan TV, which are mini documentaries. This here is 2 hours. Actually, we skimmed it down at least to about 90 something minutes, just so it's smooth. But normally in full fledged it's 2 hours. And basically, it was a process. We actually premiered May 15th of 2022. We actually opened to a great response at the Dwyer Center. We since then have been in several film festivals. We've won 7 of them, some international from Europe.
Go ahead,
We
name
have
them.
okay.
I want some further
Well,
statements.
France, okay, England, and India. And then we also had some locals, some in as California. We had one here, and then we have some. So there was 7. Then we have several other honors, which is honorable mention, nominees, first runner up. So we are very honored for those recognitions, and more to come, more coming in, because it's a testament to the work. And one of the things that my goal was, in this media, there's always showing Black men in a negative light. I wanted to show some very powerful, intelligent Black men who made major contributions to our culture, history. And that's something children don't see all the time. You don't see these images. So
Black
it,
men lifting up Black women.
yes, Black men lifting up Black women, excellent, because they did establish basically the Grandassa Models, which is using a word Grandassa, which the late Carlos Cooks used the word to represent Africa. So the Grandassa Models, which is again celebrated 60 years this year, and we're also honoring them. Let me say real quick, at this particular showing, we're going to be honoring some of the original Grandassa Models, as well as the currently identified Grandassa Models who are still with us. We were honored to do a preliminary award to the great Black Rose, who's now 96 years young.
She's 96.
Doing,
Wow.
yes, she's doing well. And she was just so excited, just to be given that opportunity. Unfortunately, she suffered a stroke about 2 years ago, but she's still strong, still sharp. So we were very honored to give her that in a wonderful tribute. We also are going to be honoring another Grandassa model, the beautiful Nomsa Helene Brath, Cinque's mother.
Mom.
We're
That's
very
right.
honored to
One
give
of the most
her.
beautiful Black women I've ever seen. I used to
Yes, and
I used to love to tease your mother with that.
yes, and she's the president. She is a very strong sister. I had the pleasure of interviewing her for this.
A homeschooling pioneer.
Yes, she is,
Harlem
and
community.
hopefully doing some other work to celebrate her individually.
Wonderful
But
comrade. Wonderful
you'll
comrade.
see, and you've seen the movie already, so you'll know it's a very powerful testament to the work, to these wonderful women who've been holding up the culture. In addition to that, we're representing there's a male who's being represented as a Grandassa model that you don't hear about. His name is Frank Adu Robinson. He not only was he one of the models or escorts during the Grandassa Models early years, but he's also a phenomenal actor. He was an actor,
That's
and
right.
so he is being recognized. His wife is there. He's no longer with us, and some other people. Another person. Who was the other brother? Who the trainer for the Grandassa Models?
Jimmy Abu.
Jimmy Abu, yeah. So, we recognize the Grandassa Models as a proclamation by Assembly member Eddie Gibbs, excuse me, Eddie Gibbs, and we're very honored and thankful that he decided that he wanted to recognize the Grandassa Models. So that's also taking place on the same date. And again, if I may mention again that this will take place next Friday from 5:30 to 9:30 at the Rose Auditorium at 41 Cooper Square in Manhattan, 6th train to Astor Place, R&W train to 8th Street. And again, there is some COVID protocols, but we really hope that people come out. We really are excited and we are thankful. So thank you again for having us.
Before you go, two things. I just Principal Kafele, one of our legendary educators from the area, is shouting out Cinque because everybody's.
That's cool how y'all do that. I like that.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Right. But we have this is quiet as it's kept. This is a hip hop talk show, right? So both of you need to be asked our ritual question that all of our guests get to ask. And then you see this young man that's just coming on. That's DJ Rhino. He's our in-house DJ, the greatest DJ in the universe. We call him, right? Rhino, I want you to ask our guests our ritual question.
Peace. Y'all can hear me?
Yep.
Peace. Well, I'll start with the Queen. Queen Louise, let me ask you, is there anyone in the hip hop culture that you listen to that inspires you in what you do?
Yes, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five.
Wow.
When growing up, the message was very powerful. They always had insightful lyrics that were inspiring. So to me, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five was number one for my list of conscious rap and conscious income. So that's for me.
Okay, beautiful. And see,
talk about hip hop.
For myself, because I know that this is coming, I would be remiss to not plug my own younger brother, Mandela Eskia, who goes by the rap name of Black Zeus. Okay. You know, he has his own hip hop music band. And speaking of hip hop music band, I could also tie that in with my other favorite group. It's a co-favorite. I got to go with Daddy Yo and Stetson Sonic. I recently spoke to Daddy Yo and Stetson Sonic about their video for AFRICA, and just my father's role in constructing that with them, which I hadn't really totally known until he told me about him and our great legendary Kwame Ture.
Yeah.
And Samori Marksman. Those three.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That's what's up.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Louise, if y'all ever do any shows of a Grandassa kind and you need male models, draft my crazy behind out them crazy.
Absolutely. We got you on the list. You're number one on the list.
If you need males, you probably don't need males.
I was gonna say, I think that the segue into our hip hop segment just is so appropriate right now because starting Black is Beautiful movement, the Black Arts movement, the understanding of conscious of Black self, and how that translates into the best of hip hop, the stuff that's near and dear to me, the stuff that I think makes the most cultural impact, positive cultural impact within our community, had direct roots in the stuff that the Grandassa Models and this movement.
But Jonathan, they don't talk about it a lot because a lot of the information with, there's a picture with Stetson Sonic on stage that I didn't realize when they first did that at 125th Street. You can see my father, and you can see Kwame Ture, and you can see Samori Marksman in the background at Stetson Sonic. But I didn't know that was an education process that they were getting about apartheid, and just the way that whole song is constructed, that they had elders that they were working with to bring their art out. You don't have that in hip hop no more.
Right.
Everybody just doing whatever. Everything they talking about is a bag for the most part.
Yeah.
May I if they on mainstream corporate radio.
May I thank you? May I quickly say this? Cinque I don't know if we had mentioned, there was a brother who came to the premiere a year ago. And he was so impressed by the program, to the documentary, that he and his partner designed a mural right on 125th Street. We encourage you. Can you tell people the location, Cinque, so that
it's 120? If you come off the Metro North, it's right on the east side off the train.
Yes,
125th Street, and that's basically Lexington. And you come right off, you will see it's called at the underpass. You will see the historical Black is Beautiful mural. Is right next to the deceased rapper DMX.
Yes,
those are the two big murals right when you start the mural thing coming right off there.
Jonathan, I'll put it on my page and you can put it on our page.
Yep.
All right. All right, cool.
In between right there.
Yep.
All right, y'all. I'll see you soon. I'm gonna call you in a Mississippi minute because I want to talk to you about what I got in mind for when we can do this thing on this side too. All right, I got you.
All
right. Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Peace, everybody.
All right.
Take
Peace,
care.
y'all.
Be well.
All
Peace.
right.
Take
All
care.
right.
So, welcome, DJ Rhino, man. Hey, man, how are you?
Well, man, how are you?
Good. You know, welcome to. Well, we're welcoming everybody to DJ Rhino and the state of hip hop. So, what's up, man?
Not much. I mean, I kind of just wanted to just pick up from where you just left off. You remember my man G, who used to come to the studio with us.
Right.
You know, we were just in a big conversation earlier talking about the art of the music and hip hop, the art of rap music. You know what I'm saying? We were talking about Kendrick mainly because we were talking about the classic hip hop that we used to get at a certain time. Really, it started off. We were talking about R&B, and then we got into talking about the hip hop. You know, we started off talking about how R&B is not the same now. You know, it's developed into something else now, and it's kind of withered away into something else. And then we started talking about hip hop and how that's kind of gone through a similar thing. We were talking about how our generation of R&B was basically the neo soul generation that took place in the late 90s, early millennium. You know what I'm saying? That was our generation of R&B music. You know, we're talking about D'Angelo and Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, Dwele, and you know the Roots,
Angie Stone.
Yeah, Angie Stone, all of that. You know what I'm saying? So that was our R&B for our.
And I didn't even know Angie Stone started off as a rapper until like today.
Right. Oh wow. Yeah. So she was part of Sequence when they did Funk You Up on Sugar Hill Records.
Didn't know. And Sugar Hill Records. I didn't know Angie Stone went back to the beginning of hip hop.
Yeah, and she's actually got a quick spot. You see a quick cameo of her in the first hip hop movie, Wild Style.
No kidding. She's in that?
She's
I
in
totally
it.
Missed it.
She's at,
we all watch Wild Style.
Yeah, I didn't.
It's a scene where when they're in the Dixie and everybody's rapping. She's like one of the people in the audience just watching what's going on. But you see her in there. You'll catch her in there.
I got to go back and look at it.
Yeah. It's real quick though.
She's a great and underrated producer in hip hop and R&B. She's one of the people we think of as as a neo soul artist.
Right. So you know, we were in that conversation about what happened to our R&B, and then we started talking about what happened to our hip hop, and then we were talking about how the only ones that were really carrying it for us, even though they're not from our generation, they were carrying what our generation represented. And that was Kendrick and Cole. And we started getting into this real deep conversation about Kendrick and how To Pimp a Butterfly, even though we loved Good Kid, Mad City, that was huge for us. But something about To Pimp a Butterfly was such a work of art, man.
Yep.
From top to bottom, man, and all the way through. The thread that he had going through the album and just everything on that album, the videos that he did for the album. It was a work of art, man. You know what I'm saying? This is not just like some music somebody put out an album.
I thought he deserved.
This is what makes an artist an artist. You know what I'm saying?
They gave him a Pulitzer Prize for Damn, right? The one he did after that. I think they gave him a Pulitzer for Damn because they forgot to give it to him for To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. Like it's like Denzel in Training Day. You know what I'm saying?
Come on,
right?
It's that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like they could have gave him. They could have gave it to him
for anything but Training Day. Yeah.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying, right? Even to the point where he's interviewing Tupac at the end of The Pimp a Butterfly.
Like that was so deep, man.
Right. And he's channeling that, right? Like, and he's channeling and he's really doing the thing about like I think on that album he redefined California hip hop in a different way, right?
Yeah, man.
He's like talking about Compton. He's talking about like just like he did in Good Kid, Mad City. But I think, and I love Good Kid, Mad City. I still go back to Good Kid, Mad City.
Still a great album.
Right?
Good Kid, Mad City was a
Good Kid, Mad City is still one of my top 5 favorite albums of all time, right? But The Pimp a Butterfly is just a different category.
Yeah,
right?
brother.
It was like it's like it went from hip hop to art. I remember first hearing it, and my students were looking at it. My coaches were looking at it, and everybody was discussing the lyrics. They were discussing the parts of the songs. They were just, and it was just musically, lyrically, it just spoke to the moment we were in.
Yeah, man. That was just such a moment. And we were talking about how like when that album came out, we weren't listening to anybody else, man, because it was almost, it was like he set the bar. And it was like, if you weren't on this level, if you weren't talking about this, if you weren't here with it, if you weren't bringing your art to this level, then
Right.
we weren't messing with you. I was in a Kendrick bubble at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I was seriously into that album so deep, man. It's so hard. I remember it was a white guy that put me up on the album the day that it came out. It was a white guy that was at my job, and he told me about the album, and I went and got the album that night, and it blew my mind, man.
Yeah, I was all into Good Kid, Mad City, but when that dropped, like, and I think I think Chris Randall might have been one of the first people to tell me that he had a new album that dropped and it was great, right?
Yeah.
And what was like Cryptocrats and Bloodikins, right? Like the lines that he had on there in terms of just the analysis of politics, the analysis of culture. He was self-reflective, and If These Walls Could Talk. Like that is an album that if anyone has not listened to it, like you don't even have to like hip hop to like that album.
Right.
Like that album is musically and culturally and politically and just like in a human art point.
Should be taught in schools. My brother
one of the best albums. I would say it's one of the best albums to be made, right? Yeah. You'd have to put it up there, right? And again, Good Kid, Mad City is still one of my top 5. I just put To Pimp a Butterfly in a different category, like because it is one of those albums that sets the bar for all the other albums that are around it.
Yeah.
Now when you are I to throw in what you were saying in terms of hip hop and Kendrick and Cole, but I think that there are a lot of artists on SoundCloud. There are a lot of artists who release artist stuff that I just think the day of hip hop mass media might be over. So we don't hear a lot of the young, like Saba is amazing. No Name, awesome, right? Like these are artists, these are poets who are putting stuff down, right? I think that there are a lot of, and they do concerts. They're people who know them, but like they're not Cardi B, right? In terms of that level of popularity, they don't get the mainstream type of and the question though, DJ Rhino, do you think that the era of the hip hop star, like the actual from the bottom up hip hop star, is over? That the only like actual people who like are of the culture will just be local, or people will know, or somebody like a No Name or somebody like a Saba, and we won't get big superstars from hip hop anymore simply because of streaming services. Everything is dispersed.
Well, I don't think it's over. I just feel like, just like what we were talking about earlier with the R&B, like our R&B was our R&B became the neo soul era, and then now you look at how you don't even hear the neo soul stuff now. You got to search for it now, but it was at one point you used to hear that. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same kind of thing with our generation of hip hop. It's like you're not really hearing that. You're not hearing it because they're not playing it. It's not that it's not there, but so that's why I say it's not over, because it's still out there, but you got to look for it now. It's not going to be pushed by anybody in the mainstream.
What I find is that I'm finding a lot of new artists on streaming services, right? Like I press somebody I like, and then they start playing other people who are putting out music that the only place I hear them, right, is on the streaming service, right? Like every once in a while, somebody will bubble up a little bit, but for the most part, like brilliant new neo soul artists, brilliant new hip hop artists, right? Like I'll hear just on Apple Music, right? Because it'll come up. The AI on Apple Music will introduce me to new hip hop. The AI on like good hip hop that's ground up. The AI on Apple Music or whatever streaming service you have will introduce you to the new neo soul, right? Stuff that's 2023 that's being put out. That's some good stuff. People putting it out, right? Do you think that is shaping the way that we even understand music as a phenomenon?
I mean, yeah, that it has, because, and this is something else me and my man was talking about earlier today too, is like, like back in the day when you used to be able to like pick up an album. You know what I mean? You should be able to open up the album.
Right.
You know, look at the artwork in the album. You know what I'm saying? Read everything on the album. You know, there was one album I had the other day. I opened it up and there was all the lyrics to all of the songs inside. You know what I mean? To be able to just touch and feel, it's a whole experience. You know what I'm saying? Now it's just a click.
Yep.
You're not touching nothing. You're not feeling nothing. It's just, all right, we're going to click this. And, you know, we were saying, you know, on iTunes or whatever, you may be able to, you know, they'll put the lyrics up on the screen for you and a picture of the album. But it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as standing here, holding it. I can stare at this as long as I want to, open it up, and just, you know what I mean? Just experience this. I can experience.
Well, we were emotionally attached to our music because we had to buy each individual album we consumed. Right. So there was an emotional attachment.
An album culture too back then. It wasn't just putting out songs and singles all the time.
Right. So we would get that, like Kendrick has album culture, right? Mm-hmm. And Cole has album culture. They don't put out singles. They put out works of art that you have to consume it from beginning to end to understand it, right?
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, right? Like there was a different experience with music when you buy it individually, when you're able to sit with the artwork, where you're able to look at it, where you become a collector, right? Mm-hmm. There are no more like your background DJ Rhino no longer exists, right? That's obsolete. That background is like it is what it is, right? I have a bunch of CDs, and you know that I will never use because I got a streaming service, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good or bad, or like what is lost or what is gained? Like,
well, one thing we have to look at what we mentioned last week, that how vinyl for the last 2 years, vinyl has made a comeback.
Yes.
Made a huge comeback. It's sold more than CDs and everything else. Mm-hmm. CDs, cassettes, streaming, and all of that. Vinyl has come back crazy. I know a lot of it is from the 45 DJs. A lot of DJs now are doing 45 sets and stuff like that. So everybody's digging for 45s. And just vinyl DJs like myself. Like I just got to create a record from, you know, hooking my man up with his own pop-up record shop. Got to create a record from him that I'm going through now. Just got my turntables fixed, so now I can play vinyls. But yeah, vinyls, man, is made a comeback because that's where the soul is, man. That's where the like I said, the touch. You can touch it, you can feel it. It's got a warm sound to it. It's very engaging. It's very engaging when you have vinyl and you can play vinyl.
So is there a difference between DJing on vinyl and DJing digitally? Like you've done both, right? Like you've had the laptop and the, you know, so what is the difference between that type of DJing? And do you think that DJing, like, hey, Baba Zaid,
mm-hmm.
Man, your head looks so big right now.
It is a big head. You can't fake that.
I always gotta remind you, like you way close up on your camera, brother. You way. That's all right. I'm just looking out for you, man. Just looking out for you. All right. So, but is there like a difference between how you DJ'd on vinyl? Like, what's the difference, and how you DJ digitally?
The only difference really is, you know how technology is. Technology makes certain things more convenient. It takes some of the struggle out of what you do. So that's what the digital DJing does. Because, you know, when we were doing parties and stuff, you know, we had to carry crates of records. We had to carry crates of vinyls. Like all of this stuff right here behind me, we had to carry in crates. You know what I mean? And you had to have enough records that was going to, you know, be enough for the party. You know, if the party was going to be 5 hours, if the party was going to be all night till the morning, you had to have records that was going to last that long. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and then so looking at it digitally, you got it all in your laptop, in your hard drive. You know what I'm saying? So
you got days of music.
Carry crates and do all of that anymore. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing.
But Rhino asked him, but look, and I'm sure you agree. I haven't done music digitally, right? And I used to have my records. In fact, I had them right there at Rutgers North, right where we used to be. when I used to do my jazz show and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there is an intimacy, or there is a feel, there is a there's a presence that seems to come from handling the records.
Yeah, most definitely.
That's
Personal.
me just saying that.
Yeah, it's personal.
Yes.
Very personal. Yeah, and you love your records, man. Like people like me, man. I love my records, man. It's very personal. You don't want anybody mishandling your records.
Right. I still have mental health issues about the fact that I don't have my records no more. I'm gonna make it plain. Oh my God, I miss my records.
You said you still have mental health issues over here.
Yes, right.
That's
those
right.
Are the ones there. Those are some.
Yeah, man. I mean, because those records, you're attached to those records. Like for me, a lot of my music knowledge started through my father. Started with my father. My father was a music lover. He was a musician. He was a DJ on college radio. He was a DJ in the clubs and stuff like that. So a lot of my music knowledge started there, and then I branched off on my own. But yeah, it's so personal because this is stuff you grew up with. This is music and records that you grew up with. You know what I'm saying? This is a simple song can bring back a whole era of memories. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And those memories would include you going to the store, you buy
the record shop.
I remember when I first bought this record. I remember when I first heard this song on the radio and went out and bought the record. And I remember when I first played the record. All of that, man. It's very personal. Like I said, it's very engaging. It's more engaging than just digital. You know what I mean?
My child
that's Flash Furious 5, most definitely.
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5. Ed, you'll appreciate this. When me and Bob were in Roselle together, right? St. George Avenue, we had like 3 record shops within like 3 blocks of each other.
Okay.
Right? And me and Bob, we didn't realize where we were going. Bob, and I know Bob certainly didn't realize where he was going at that time, but when he ultimately took off of what he did, it all came out of those record shops. One was on Frank and St. George, one was on St. George and Chandler. Well, 2 were on St. George and Chandler. One was on the Linden side, and the other was on the Roselle side. We stayed there. We were all in and out of them, loading up on 45s first back then, and then out.
Yeah, man, the 45s. I'm telling you, I really believe that the 45s is what made the vinyl, the big vinyl comeback, man. There's so many DJs out there now that's doing 45 sets.
Yeah.
That it's crazy, man. They're in demand like crazy right now.
So are they still making vinyl?
They're still making vinyls. I mean, it's specialty kind of stuff nowadays, but they're still out there because they know that it's still in the market now, especially now it's in the market. So yeah, it's probably best to have a vinyl copy of something that you put out because there's definitely going to be DJs to play it.
Is it more expensive?
Some places, yeah. I mean, some places, man, like just trying to buy the old stuff, man. Some places, man, the prices are ridiculous for one album. I mean, I've seen people try to charge like $50, $75, for an album.
Yeah,
just because it's an old classic, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe it's an old classic that they still have wrapped in the plastic, hasn't been busted open yet or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, some of these places. What's crazy? The shop, the pop-up shop that I was helping out doing those last couple of weeks. The last day, a guy from Rock and Soul Records, a classic record shop in New York City, the guy came by and was buying some records for the store. So he bought a whole. Man, he had to buy like maybe somewhere from like 4 to 5 to 6 crates worth of records. And but they're gonna put it in the store and they're gonna double the price. You know what I'm saying? That's what they do.
Wholesale and retail.
But let me ask you a question, Rhino. So a couple of things. One is that wouldn't you have to have a turntable, right, with a needle that can play the vinyl? That's one. And then 2, is it difficult to get the parts for a turntable today?
Nah, it's not difficult to get parts because there's turntables. They still got turntables out there, but
And they make them new as well.
This
They're making a what, John?
New.
Oh,
In other words, they still make turntables. You can
Yeah.
still
yeah,
buy
there's
a
still
turntable on
turntables out
Amazon.
because there's still
1 2s
DJs
is still
out
the
there.
1 2s. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
so yeah, you can get turntables, and then you got to think there's a bunch of folks our age and older that still have their turntables, but and they never really continued on with their vinyl because things changed into CD and everything else.
Right.
But now vinyls are coming back, and it's a big vinyl thing now. It's a big vinyl wave now. That they still got their turntable, and they that was the thing too. The very first customer that we had was my man. Big ups to my man Dutch 40. That was a brother that I was helping with the pop-up shop, with the record shop. But his very first customer was his aunt. And so she was buying up all of these old jams, man, the old Gladys Knight and stuff like that. And there's folks that still want that stuff. They still have their turntables, you know what I mean? And why not,
Right. Just thinking about it, right? It would be nice to have, because back in the day when I was coming through, right? When you finally got your own crib, you developed a music room in your house. You know what I mean? And you had like a couple of turntables up in there. You thought you was a damn DJ. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I remember, man, when I moved to Philadelphia, I did that. I, went and bought, some equipment and and did all of that. But it would be dope even today, man, if you had an old Pioneer, turntable, right? And you had some of those vinyl records, and people came over and you pulled out your vinyl and you could actually play some of those classic music. The only problem is, how do you keep that stuff from being scratched?
Yeah, you just gotta take care of your stuff, man. I mean, that's
Can't
all
be,
it is.
can't be lending them to people.
I'm telling you, Ed, that stuff is going on now. Like that's going
Mhm.
on now. There's DJs that do vinyl sets now. I'm about to start doing vinyl sets now that I got my turntables fixed.
Right.
That's going on now, man. People doing vinyl sets, vinyl parties. You know what I'm saying? Big ups to my man R Train. Big ups to my man DJ Jekka. You know what I'm saying? They go out there and they do vinyl sets. Big ups to my man Malik Mania and Max Jerome. They do the 45 sets. You know what I mean? It's going on out there, man. You know what I mean? It's out there. The technology's out there. I mean, as far as the turntables to play the records and all of that. I mean, it's there. So it's going on.
When you say
Parties are happening.
When you say the 45 set, you mean those actual 45s?
45s, man. That's the biggest thing in vinyl today, right now, are the 45s. That's the biggest craze right now. There's so many DJs out there that are searching for these kind of records, for these 45s. They're looking for these. You know what I'm saying? There's so many DJs that are doing parties with these. You know what I mean? And even new records, it'll be new records that'll be pressed up on 45s, and they'll play those at the party.
It's
what's big craze right now.
You know what's funny, Rhino? I remember, man, when I was a kid, right? And my mother used to send me to the record store to buy 45s, man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember I used to go buy James Brown records, Aretha Franklin records. And I remember when it seemed like James Brown made a damn record every week, man. Because I was always in the record store.
His output was,
yeah. And do y'all remember when in the record store they would play the record for you? Remember that?
Yeah, that
sure
was
they scratched.
Rock and
That's
Soul.
right.
Big ups again to Rock and Soul in New York City, man. Rock and Soul was the #1 spot that we used to always go to, and they used to definitely let you play the record before you bought it, so you knew what you were buying.
You knew it was not scratched.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely, man. You just be in there playing. Big ups to hip hop, man. Again, we are in the 50th year of hip hop, the 50th anniversary of hip hop culture, and I gotta say this because Ed, you just brought up records and 45s of James Brown, and I just want to say the song, the Funky Drummer by James Brown, was not a hit record during the time when that record came out.
That is the truth.
That was not a hit record. That was
not one of his hits.
Exactly.
Wow.
And when hip hop started sampling Funky Drummer in the music, that record flew. I mean, that record flew up the charts, man, just from hip hop, and it gave a huge spotlight on the drummer Clyde Stubblefield. He was the funky drummer on that song, and on a lot of songs he was the funky drummer on Cold Sweat, and a lot of songs, man, a lot of James Brown's hits and non-hits, you know what I'm saying? But on a lot of James Brown music, Clyde Stubblefield, you hear James call out Clyde's name on the live version of "Give It Up, Turn It Loose." When you hear the congas going on and James Brown is chanting, and then he says Clyde, and then boom, the beat drops. That's Clyde on the drums. That's Clyde Stubblefield on the drums. So
I got a
so hip hop made Funky Drummer what it was, because Funky Drummer was not a hit at all. It wasn't a James Brown hit at all at the time when it came out. Hip hop made that a huge hit.
Right. I got a trivia question for you though. Do you know who was the first hip hop artist to use James Brown's music?
The first hip hop artist to use James Brown's music?
Yeah.
In a way, I personally would have to say Africa Bambaataa, because Africa Bambaataa did a song with James Brown, and he had James Brown records and cuts and stuff in the record with unity, peace, unity, love, and having fun. That was James Brown and Africa Bambaataa.
Okay.
That was back in the early 80s. But what was that your answer, or
no? Because I would have said Heavy D, because it seemed like Heavy D was always using James Brown beats.
Oh yeah, when he had the Overweight Lovers in the House.
Yeah.
And
that was the introduction for a lot of people, man, back to James Brown. You know, especially the young kids.
Funky. Yeah. Yeah.
But James
I would definitely go further back and say Africa Bambaataa, because you know, Bambaataa and Herc and all of them, they were the ones that really brought James Brown to the people. You know what I'm saying? Those were the records that they were playing at those early parties. They were playing James Brown and you know.
But part of the problem is, you know, Rhino, in the early days, when they were sampling James Brown, they weren't paying it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That's why that whole thing went down with when James first got out of jail. Remember, he got that with Full Force, and that's why he had that song "I'm Real," because he was talking. You know, he's the real deal. He's not the sample. Then you know, but he was also addressing some of those issues about how, you know, hip hop at that time had sampled so much of his music and had never paid him.
Right.
So at that point, when he got out of jail, that's when his whole team started getting involved in the legal you know, status of what was going on. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, James Brown was the number one most sampled. You know, a lot of people like to say other people, man, but he was the most sampled. And then I would probably say maybe P-Funk and, you know, Sly and Kool and the Gang and them.
Yeah.
But James was number one.
But I also think that hip hop, because of their creativity, brought back a lot of those artists.
Yeah.
Right? And helped those artists who were not eat again.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of that music, you know, because most of them, you know, at that point weren't really making the kind of money that they should have been making.
Right.
You know, and so you know, you've got to credit them for that. You know, but I think that, and that's sort of like what Mtume said when he said that Puff did him right. You know what I mean? In terms of Juicy, you know, which was a big deal.
Now, Ed, I wanted to jump in real quick because you just brought up the brother's name. Did you hear that James Mtume is getting a ceremonial road sign on the street?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's on the 12th in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You know? And we'll probably invite Fire On, as well as Brother Kenyatta, who is the councilman down in Philadelphia, who is the one that actually put that in to initiate that for. So we'll probably invite them on before the street sign. And I may go down there and shoot it live for the National Black Political Convention. I may just shoot down there and do that. And Zaid, you can roll with me if you want to, man. Yeah.
All right, cool. And I want to welcome Hakeem Green on. Hey, man.
Peace. Peace, peace,
Yes.
peace, 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 peace to the gods, peace to the gods.
All right.
Salute, salute. Baba Zaid,
Yes, sir.
love you, bro.
Love you back at you, son. No back
Ed,
at
love
you.
you. You know what I mean? Rhino, love you. John, love you.
Love you
Oh,
back, man. Love you back.
so Hawk, you don't love Ed.
I said Ed. What you talking
Oh,
about?
I
You're the
ain't
second
you.
person.
I ain't
Yeah,
you.
second person I said, Ed.
Wow.
You
Yeah,
like
that's
Second
what
person,
it says.
say,
Look
come
out.
No
on.
love, Snoop Dogg. No
No,
love,
yeah,
Snoop Dogg.
you don't
Watch
love
out now. Watch out now. Watch out.
Because you know
Of course I love Ed Riley. What you talking about?
you know I got love for Hawk. You know.
Oh yeah, that's for sure, for sure. You know that's right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So real quick, Hot, you got a date yet for 24 hours apiece this year?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to say yet.
You want to say it yet? All right.
Yeah, I
ready.
don't want to say.
Ready.
I saw the promo. I saw
Don't
like
take it
a
out the
little
oven
promo
till
you
it's
did.
ready.
Yeah, well, see that's a tour that we're actually launching alongside Blacktop Streetball Association.
Right.
So the mix of basketball and 24 hours apiece. If you remember last year, 2 weeks prior to 24 hours apiece, Blacktop did a activation in front of City Hall, and it was magnificent. You know, a bunch of folks came out to enjoy basketball and all the critical thinking skills that come along with the character development, discipline, teamwork, you know what I mean? Position, all that stuff that comes along with basketball. It's not just about winning and, you know, the celebrity and all that.
Right.
That's combine the two, you know what hip hop do. You know what I mean? Peace, love, unity, safety, having fun.
That's right.
24 hours, we out.
You know, what if I can make say something I really liked about the timing of last year, and I don't know if this in the works or what the thinking is behind it, but I love the Labor Day weekend of it because it was like school starting. It's also a high crime weekend, right? And people studied this. I believe there was an article last year that compared Newark to other areas during that weekend, and how other cities were thinking about doing the same thing for that weekend. I think that in the weekend where it was all peace and love and you know chill and wonderful and hugging and hip hop and you know in Newark, that same weekend, there was not a lot of peace and love in Chicago or Philadelphia, or there were a few other cities that did not demonstrate as much peace and love during that weekend. And some people were, and there was talk of other people replicating what Newark had done for like symbolically, right? Like, and it's also when school starts. It's I thought it was, you know, I don't know what the thinking is right now, and I'm not privy to any of these conversations. But if I could give a plug of, you know,
Labor Day weekend.
But here's the thing, though, Hot. Here's the thing. Now I'm gonna put my legal hat on. You created 24 hours apiece. You got to do something. If they copy that, 24 hours apiece belongs to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it belongs to us.
The money on the money.
Right. It belongs to us, but at the same time, you know, people, you know, how can I say this the right way? Using what we do in Newark as a symbol for peace, love, unity, safety, having fun. We don't want to get in the way of that. We want that to spread. We want people to embrace it. We have a particular brand. We have a particular way that we approach, you know, the execution of 24 hours apiece. But in the spirit of love, which is what it's all about, you know, it would be a tremendous thing if we could unify around the country during that weekend as an honor, peace, love, unity, safety, having fun. That's what it's about. Now, we created 24 hours apiece to be in alignment with Black August, though.
Okay.
So the first 24 hours apiece was in August. The first few 24 hours apiece that we did was in August. Hip hop birthday is, of course, in August, and we know what Black August means to struggle and the upliftment of our people. So we wanted to position it that, but it just so happens, you know, 2 weeks out, a week out, September 1st, the school starts, so it kind of all falls into play, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's I'm glad that, you know, 24 hours apiece has gotten national recognition. And I'm glad that it actually showed, like, you know, the potential for, like, the stuff that you've been working for years, right? You wanted 24 hours to be like, people get together. and let's stop the nonsense. And like I think last year more than any other year it showed that unity, especially because it came right at a time where violence was heating up all over the country, but did not heat up here.
Yeah, it was a good weekend that last weekend.
And
It was the biggest so far. It was the biggest so far, but we've had some tremendously important and meaningful years. KRS-One, of course, Beans, Freeway, PNB Rock performed that year. He passes away, gets murdered a year later. It's like, you know, he came out in support of the message, and that was huge. Rest in peace to PNB Rock. But we had the Rakim and Eric B. the first time they were on stage together after, you know, not being on stage for decades. Was at 24 Hours Apiece, 2017, I believe.
Right. The one with Jada, man, right after he won the
versus.
What? Come on. With KRS too?
On Broad and Market.
Yeah.
Yeah. On Broad and Market.
Come on,
man. Yeah, it was big, huge. But you know, that's the power of hip hop, right? What real hip hop isn't what we do, it's how we do it. So we could be writing rhymes in the booth, we could be breakdancing, we could be graffiti artists, we could be DJs, we could be mayors, councilmen, right. We could be activists, we could be, we could be in positions that really affect change in the community. That's real hip hop.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. Real hip hop for the people.
That's right.
That's right. That's what 50 years look like.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say 50 years, let me tell you what
that's
it
what
looks
it should look like too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So when people are running around calling, what they're doing outside of that, that's not hip hop. That's not culture. That's not what we're talking about.
Come on. Yeah.
And so that's the celebration, I think, and that's why we say here, having done this for 15 years, we are the #1 political hip hop radio political talk show. There ain't nobody else doing this, right? They don't claim that, they try to do it undercover, but we don't make no bones about it, right? We are adult men who grew up listening to hip hop, but let's be clear. We understand that the real power is in the people who can make those decisions in your life every day. We clear about that. But we also are those people who grew up listening to hip hop, right? We also those people who got family members, right, who were involved in this business and in this music. Didn't get the celebration, didn't get the money they deserve, and some of them still aren't getting the money they deserve. I mean, I heard LL Cool J say recently, he said he had no idea how some of these boys are making the money they're making. He said he never made that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
think of how big he was.
Yeah.
And because direct to consumer, the business model is different now than it was back when LL got signed.
That's right.
You can get on one of these platforms where you're selling direct, and these kids get popular on social media. They get hot on social media, and then you can buy directly from them, and they get a much larger share of the pie, and you get it more direct. You get it immediately, goes right to your account. LL, you had to wait. There's a recoupment process. Then they don't have to pay you. It's like they don't have to pay you for a year and a half, and they don't have to pay you every 6 months. And then you got lawyers. You audit. You can only audit but so many times. Yeah. Different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard LL say that he would never get a royalty check. He would just get a huge advance.
Wow.
Oh.
Right.
Crazy.
He would never get a royalty check. He just gets a huge advance. Like he looked at the music as it's the commercial for the LL Cool J brand. So you make the money in all these other places. And then, when it's time to do another deal with the record label, you just hit them heavy for millions. And you just recoup.
As opposed to owning owning your masters.
Owning the master. Like it's different. It's different. Right? You make music right there. You upload it, right? You own everything.
Right.
The copyrights, the trademarks, everything is you. There's
Yeah,
there's an app to facilitate every administrative need you might have in the music industry. There's an app for it.
Yeah, it's Puffy just confirmed that he pays Sting $5,000 a day for that sample
Yeah.
on I'll Be Missing on I'll Be Missing You, right? $5,000 a day for the rest of Sting's life. A day for the rest of Sting's life.
Incredible.
Well, I think the way to look at that though is more the song generates money, right?
Right.
And out of the money that song generates, $5,000 belongs to Sting.
Right. Now Puffy's not hurting. No, I mean
right. It's not like it's different than Puffy paying, like that song is so huge and generates so much revenue. It's nothing.
Right.
Let Sting get his.
Right. But just the power of owning your masters and owning your publishing. Right?
For sure. Yeah.
But it's hard to believe that one record generates so much money to be able to pay this dude and Puff still see a profit.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know how much actually Puff owns of that song. I think Sting might own the whole thing.
Well, you know that song gets run every year, every March 9th.
Right.
Yeah, because I think Puffy put it out before he got clearance on the song. But he would eventually get clearance, and of course, Sting performed it at the Grammys with him. Yeah, that's amazing.
Hello, welcome.
What's up?
Hey, wait, question. Wait, hold up. Wait.
Is that John?
This is, and that it sounds like Congressman Payne. It sounds a lot like Congressman Payne, but it looks like he looks different. I like the beard. You also I like the hair, but is that son?
Yeah, you get a little lazy,
Congressman Payne, that's you.
Or you can't afford, these raises are going up, man.
Okay, Congressman, it looks good. Like you look younger. You look much younger. At first, I thought I was like, "Wait, is it his son, nephew?"
Thank you. I think.
No, whenever I come for you, Congressman, I'm always blatant. I'm never aside. It looks nice. It looks really nice.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. It did take me a few seconds to recognize you.
That's because you ain't been here.
That's true too. That is true too. Because I've been
gallivanting all over the world.
I've been working with the children, Congressman.
Oh, all right. Okay, then it's all right then. As long as it's for the kids.
For the kids. It's for the kids.
Okay.
How are you?
What's good, Congressman?
What's happening? Hot.
You muted, Hot.
Peace, Congressman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Good to see you. Good to
Likewise.
see
you. Yes, sir.
Rhino.
Peace, Congressman. What's going on, brother?
Yes, sir. I'm all right.
Good to see
my revolutionary brother up there.
That's right.
Well, welcome.
Were you out there? Were you out there the other night with Larry?
And so was your uncle.
Yep.
I know. That's why
he marched.
That's why I asked.
Almost halfway through the whole thing. He sure did.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I got to talk to him about that.
Well, we took care of him. I wasn't gonna let it. Yeah, well, I don't have casualties on my watch. I don't play that, right? And I stopped several times just to check on him, right?
Yeah.
Well, Congressman, welcome to the Payne Report. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, the news of the day is what's going on down in Memphis, man. With the removal of them two young brothers.
I'm reaching out for them, by the way.
And that well, that young girl you had on is actually connected to them.
Yeah, Amber Sherman. Yes.
So you know, Congressman, that that was just. I mean, right now, I think white folk are just showing us blatant racism.
Yes, that's right.
And I just think that they clearly are saying that they don't. I mean, they don't give a damn what we think and what power we think we have. That they can go inside legislatures and just turn them upside down and move them any way that they want to move them. You know, I mean, my thing is that, you know, what protest is going to come from the Congressional Black Caucus in terms of supporting those young brothers? Because what I've heard is that, you know, that there needs to be some sort of because President Obama already responded. But what I've heard is that there needs to be some sort of major demonstration from current elected officials, black elected officials, and the white elected officials to support them, that head down to Memphis and support them young brothers. What are you hearing?
Well, you know, let me just say, you said you heard that President Obama responded. Nobody responds quicker than the Congressional Black Caucus. President Obama maybe made a public statement, but we've been in contact with the brothers. So don't ever think that the Congressional Black Caucus is lagging behind or not proactive in these matters. We were the first ones to contact them. We had a emergency meeting last night across the nation. Everybody's home in their districts, and we had a Zoom meeting about this crisis last night. If you watched MSNBC today, you would have seen the chairman of the Black Caucus, Stephen Horsford, on this morning discussing the matter on Morning Joe. So we were up early in reference to this. So we're already, you know, formulating a strategy, seeing how they want, you know, us to be helpful, and going to move forward with it. Yeah, you know, you're right. They are just actually showing us who they are. And, you know, for the two young men to be expelled and not the lady, just, you know, compounds the insult. So, you know, we're formulating a strategy around supporting these brothers.
And we think that was deliberately done too, man, because that was just the accent. Like, just in case you didn't understand what we were doing, like, just in case just in case you didn't understand what we're doing down in Memphis, we're not kicking her out.
Yeah.
How you like it?
Yeah. I still haven't heard the justification for her not being expelled as well. So I'm sure they'll come up with some excuse if they haven't already. I just haven't heard it.
Yeah, and to some extent, I don't think that they feel compelled to even come up with an excuse, because it was like, she just didn't get. I mean, they voted one out, and the other had more votes, right? Because they didn't want to vote her out.
I know. Actually, you needed 66 votes to be expelled, and she got 65.
Right.
Yep, that's what I heard too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they're like,
so that could have been a ploy too, right? You know, just one less person. You know, so it looks like we're dealing with her too. Just make sure one less person votes no.
Right.
I mean, votes yes.
Right. And that's more like show the white woman her place. Right. Show her that her place. Don't expel her, but let her know you just got spanked. Right. If you want to be like them Negroes, we're gonna treat you like them Negroes. But you know, they're still Negroes, so they're out.
Yeah.
Like the racial politics is just off the chain, blatant, in your face.
Yep.
And it's interesting because it kind of goes with the first segment that we had. We're talking about what happened with Mumia, right? And I know that that your father had done things to support Mumia way back as well. And that every time he's on, you're always speaking about Mumia as well. So it's just interesting where there seem to be things that go against the rule of law, but just we're the exceptions, right? it seems like they're getting more and more in your face. We see this with police brutality. We see this with certain decisions. We see this with the decision in Mumia's case, where there's a exculpatory evidence and not even a hearing, right? And we see this in Memphis, where people are getting expelled, where people who've committed sexual harassment not expelled because you have to respect their constituents. People who have committed crimes, right, like not expelled because you have to consider their constituents. It's only in the most egregious cases where people have been expelled, like not even even civil war kind of level, right? But this indignity would be, what are they expelled for? Legislating while black.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, are we surprised? I mean, it is really just and when you bring up the rule of law, I think the rule of law is either, well, you got to remember, none of these rights and all that we talk about in this country, we weren't in the equation. We weren't included in all that. So we're adopting some rules that they're basically saying like, hey, that didn't apply to you. In fact, you're the only people it didn't apply to. So so stop trying to be a part of this great experiment, as they called it. We're not ever supposed to be part of it. So the rule of law is either about us or for us. Just depends on what side of the matter you're on. Either it's about us or for us. And that's really the bottom line. I was watching something yesterday and I was kind of not privy to it, but I've been learning the last year or two really about it in some depth. But to when we got our freedom to not have anything set up to give us a little bit of a hand, was a detriment to our community, our people in the beginning. So it's like, okay, you're free. See you later. No, nothing. Where folks were coming here from Europe and getting parcels of land
grants. That's right.
And so, I mean, it's just amazing. And then, what else? If you didn't have anything else to do, what do? You kind of stay there, and the guy says, "Look, I'll give you food to work," and you're right back into slavery. And then moving forward from there, the whole prison system was slavery, because they would end up, a lot of the prisons in Mississippi are on the old plantations. So they would lock the guys up, and guess what they did? They picked cotton for the state. The state would loan them out to farmers. So it was still organized slavery. And so I just am just amazed at the level of what we've gone through and where we have come in less than 100 years. And believe me, remember now, it's been less than 100 years where we've had these rights, and not that it's right, but for our people to think that we're gonna rectify 400 or 500 years of indignity and injustice in 50 years is not, is not really looking at the concept. Not that it's right or any of it's right, but nothing that's been in place that long is going to be changed in 40, 50, 60 years, 70 years.
But here's the other thing, though, Congressman. What you've got to look at is that here's a political system that understands civil law. They also understand how to right a wrong, and so they know that the way you right a wrong is you usually do that through civil means. And for some reason, the struggle has been, let's not pay them black folks. So what they probably saying in private is, let's not pay them niggas. But they know it's the right thing to do, right? Before and when you say that when black folk, were freed by these white folks, and they didn't give us anything, they just said, okay, you want to be free, go ahead. And that part of it is that, yeah, let's free you, but if we give you nothing, we know you're going to go out there into the wilderness, and so therefore you're going to have to come back. And then, a lot of things that when we talk about, when we talk to the mayor, when he's on the mayor's forum, the thing he talks about is that, you think about the mental illness that, we never got any help, right, with that level of mental illness that we went through. Because,
Oh no. Oh
centuries.
yeah.
That,
Yeah, the psychological game that's been played on us is incredible. I mean, even to use just think about how they use the Bible. And that's how they became the master, because the master was referenced in the Bible. So it was perfect for them that they're the master. So anything you read out of the Bible talks about the master. And it's so the psychological warfare that's been practiced on us for eons. It has been disabling, to say the least. I mean, it's evident in our communities. So
and that's why we're still suffering, right? Because just like, and this, Zaid, just like Dr. Carter G. Woodson talks about it, the miseducation of the Negro, right? I mean, we've been so miseducated that even when we were allowed to go out of the front door, but because of what had been done to us, Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that our own level of self-hatred wouldn't allow us to go out the front door. We'd go out the back door, right? Because that's the level of psychological beatdown that have been put on us as a people, and so we're still suffering from that level of hatred and lack of self-love. I mean, that's what causes us to kill each other. That's why we can't have this conversation, right? That's why we can't organize, right? I was reading something recently. We had a meeting last night with Tamika Mallory, and one of the things I was thinking about is that when I read this thing by Kwame Ture, and he said that black, he was talking about then, but he said that in the 60s, black people were great mobilizers. So we could mobilize around any issue, right? You saw that with George Floyd. That was mass mobilization, right, around what had happened. But where's our mobilization now, right? We didn't keep the organization. And so it's about organizing. And that old saying is that if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So we only mobilize around issues and events when they occur, right? Like now, we got to organize, for what happened in Memphis. But what if we stayed ready? What if you had all of those groups in place so that there was, as Zaid talk about all the time, a Black United Front that was organized, and then you had people in the right places that would not sell black people out, but that would move with some sort of Black United Front, as Kwame Ture talked about, some sort of black code, right? Some sort of way that all black people sort of relate to each other, the way white supremacists do, right? The way those folks did in Memphis. They knew that they how far they would go. They would go 65, but not to 66 to get that white woman out, right? Because they just knew, right? But black folk now, we make sure that justice is delivered, even though we're in an injustice society.
What I've on those lines, dealing with the craziness of the white supremacist and the people in charge, and Memphis state legislature, in the Congress. I haven't seen you since January when the Republicans took over. How is that? Like, what's going on right now? Like, because they seemed wild in those first few days when they just were like, no, Kevin McCarthy, you're too left leaning. You're like Bernie Sanders, right? Like, I was like, wow, Kevin, like, I never knew. But they seem to have gotten together and organized and worked together. So, how is it working in the new Congress? Is there something that we can expect to get done? Like, the last Congress passed a lot of legislation. What do you think is in store for the current Congress? And is anything coming up in the next few months, especially like the debt ceiling?
Well, we'll definitely have to deal with the debt ceiling, and I think Speaker McCarthy understands what'll happen if we don't do that. He's rattling his saber, talking a lot of nonsense, but that's for his party, his party caucus, and so he's talking a good game. But at the end of the day, he knows that can't have the full faith and credit of the United States fail. So it'll get done. It might be some really tough pills to swallow with respect to that, but it'll get done. And then anything that we really don't like, they're passing it in the House, but thank God we have the United States Senate. And so, this HR 1, which was their supposed to be Parents Act bill, like education, it's going to die over in the Senate, thank God. So, but it was a horrific bill, and very, very dangerous.
That was the bill that talked about parents being able to veto, like what was the, because I knew they were trying to do parents and education, but I never understood the bill because, like, would they be directing that funds couldn't go towards certain districts in certain ways? Because
right, yeah, and parents would have a more direct ability to, like, the whole issue around censoring books and removing books from different educational settings and what have you. And it was just a really archaic, backwards thinking piece of legislation. And so we I spoke on it, condemning it, and quite a few of my colleagues as well. But thank God we have the Senate. So all bad bills go to die in the Senate, and so we're fortunate. We're fortunate that they're in the majority, because some of these things that they're trying to pass would be like absolutely horrific for the country, Black and white people.
Right. Is there anything that you think that, is there anything in this Congress that you think, beside the debt ceiling, do you think that there's anything in the Congress that will pass, like that will be good for Newark, or that be good for us in this particular Congress? Something we can look into, forward to?
Not to my knowledge, although the CBC is focused on voting rights, and that's our number one issue right now, and we are working diligently on that. And we have a great new chairman, it's Stephen Horsford from Nevada, strong brother that came in with me and Hakeem. So I'm riding high with my class and leadership. So Joyce Beatty just relinquished the chairmanship, and she was in my class too. So the class of 2013 is running the CBC. So that's a good thing, because that allows me to interact on a certain level, and get things done that I'd like to do. So I'm very happy with the leadership. Other than the leadership of the House, we are vigilant on making Hakeem Jeffries the first African American speaker in this country's history. After having the most consequential speaker in the United States history, Nancy Pelosi. So it'll be a great way to follow up Ms. Pelosi's tenure with Hakeem Jeffries.
You know, I like how that sounds.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I was gonna ask for that civics lesson, right? Like, because
hey John, let me hit on something too about
Sure.
Hakeem. You know, naturally, the hubbub, the talk in the back rooms is well, can Hakeem, raise the money? Yeah, he talks good and he does this and that. But the challenge is to raise the money. You do not know the pressure on the speaker to raise money. You're the top fundraiser for the party. And so, people are wondering, will Hakeem Jeffries have the muster to raise the money that Ms. Pelosi did? And that's definitely a challenge. But I'm here to say that that Mr. Jeffries is doing an outstanding job. As a matter of fact, they had a fundraiser in New York, and they were supposed to raise 1.5. Their goal was $1.4 million. They raised $4.3 million.
Wow. Nice.
So, he's taking that question out of their mouths too. So, we're on our way to a historic moment in this country's history, and that's going to be the election of Hakeem Jeffries as the first African American speaker in the House.
All right, that's you're looking very optimistically at the results of the elections in 2 years, right? The congressional elections 2 years from now.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no way that the people are gonna continue with these folks that we're watching in power. You see, wherever they are, they lose. They just lost a judgeship race in Wisconsin,
right?
That has been Republican for as long as they can remember. And guess what? The Democrat won,
and it wasn't close.
And it wasn't close. 11 points. And so, there's a move afoot around this country that sees who they are and what they do and how they operate. And hopefully, we can do enough to turn it around next time.
For those choices, right? Like, I'm curious though. You do a lot, right? I remember we had these conversations before, and many people think all the congressman does is they vote on they vote on legislation. But before we've had these conversations, like even when that legislation can't be passed because you're not in the power in majority power, there are a lot of things that get done that bring money to the district. There are lots of things that you make sure that elected leaders know about. There are lots of conversations between you and other elected officials about what there is that what programs or grants or things that are available, right? And there are other things that are dealing with legislation that has been passed. So I know that you did a lot with regard to the infrastructure bill, and the infrastructure bill is now in the process of implementation.
Right.
You talked before about there's influence that is had. There's a process that has to happen to make sure that a lot of that money goes toward Black contractors within various areas. Can you give us just an update on some of the things that are going on that because again, the last time we had this conversation, I was impressed in that I didn't know about any of this stuff. Like I didn't know what congressmen did outside of voting for legislation. And you detail, right? You were detailing stuff that was being done just in terms of looking at programs for local leaders to be able, make sure they were able to get money. You were talking about, and more recently, you talked about the implementation of existing programs. Can you give us anything about or any update about any of that stuff that's going on, particularly the infrastructure bill?
Sure. Yeah, we're in the throes of getting that that infrastructure bill understood, and where those dollars are going to be able to be allocated. The thing that I'm being careful with, and I raised it with the chairman of the ranking member, who is the highest ranking Democrat on a committee. Either your chairman or ranking member. So right now, the Democrat is the ranking member. And I've talked to Rick Larson of Washington about this whole whole bill, and when is it going to be implemented? And I don't want what normally happens is the bill's out and you're waiting, you're looking, and you're not finding anything. And then you go to ask someone and they say, "Oh, well, sorry, it's all spent." Well, I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting for that to happen to me. I've been proactive in making sure that we know every step of the way where we are in the procedure of getting that money to our districts. And I have notified most of my mayors that they need to start understanding the projects that they want to do. If there are any that are shovel ready, they need to let me know, because those are the best ones to have. And shovel ready means like it's ready to go. Everything's been done. The environmentals, the legals, everything. Shovel ready means like put the shovel in the ground and start building. So I've notified all of my mayors. And I'm going to be meeting with them to give them a breakdown of what's available or what they want, to see if that's available. So we're working hard on that. And with respect to dollars back to the community, I've been very proud to last year brought back over $175 million back to the 10th district. And, we have done what they call our earmarks. Used to be, projects that you got. And they call it earmarks because it was pork. And, at one point in time, people said, "Oh, that's just wasting money, this and that." So they got rid of earmarks. But, earmarks, if done properly, and that's why they got rid of it too. Like people were spending money on, just wasteful money. Like there's a bridge in, I don't know, you remember
Alaska.
The bridge in Alaska, the bridge to
Right.
nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a waste of taxpayers' dollars. So rightfully so, they got rid of it. But now they've come back with another program now that has much better controls over the money and what you have to do to it. There is a prerequisite set of questions that you have to answer in order for the project to even qualify to be looked at. But, I was able to get $750,000 for Nason's Place, which is an autism organization out of East Orange that started in this area. $500,000 for Jersey City's domestic violence program, and so on and so on. I got Newark Emergency Services near $1 million. So I got West Orange, some money for to renovate a park. I got Hillside is going to reopen their pool and make a spray park. And so I've been very proud to work with the different communities in my district and bring back the dollars that they send to Washington as tax dollars and bring it back to the district for great projects. And so that's something else that Congressman does. John.
All right. Well, no, I appreciate that, right? Like, because just a lot of, again, people don't know what you do when you don't have the power to actually pass legislation. Some of it deals with what happens with legislation that's already been passed, and other parts are, just making sure that money that's going to be there goes to the proper places within the districts. Is this inside stuff, and that one of our commenters talked about the important inside elements. Like, you need to know the inside and the important elements. And I think that's also really important for people in the community to know too, right? To know that what it is that they can expect and what it is that's also going on, right?
Right.
I remember you talked about before that you don't talk enough about what you actually do. And most people don't know about what you actually do. I think that's true. I don't think most people know about what most of our elected officials do. So I think that this is something that's good to get out. So for the infrastructure,
they gotta have. There's a responsibility on their side too, John. They gotta have an interest in what we do.
Well, that's true.
And not only when there's a crisis and now they're in trouble. Now they want you to do whatever they need you to do, but they should have an interest, basically on what we do in order to make sure you don't end up with folks in office that you're sorry, once you turn around and see what they're about, that you're sorry that they're there. So there should be a healthy interest in what all of us are doing. So
and I have a lighter question to ask. Have you met Marjorie Taylor Greene, and is she crazy? Like, is she really as she came into New York the other day to protest for Trump? And I was like, do you pass her in the halls? And I don't want to get you in trouble if you can't talk about it.
Yeah, I see her, and for the most part, I ignore her. I don't even really speak to her. I spoke to her once by mistake because I didn't realize it was her. I was being my polite self, and in the hallway, and said hello, and I looked, it was her, and I was like, "Ooh, why did I do that?" But
because you recognized her by the crazy in her eyes, huh?
You know what? She's and with all that bluster she makes, right? She's about 4'7".
Wow.
And just the littlest thing. Her and the other one, Bolbert, they're both under 5 feet. They're the littlest things in there and making the most noise. I was like, I can't believe. I went past her one day, and I'm like, damn, she's little. But all that noise, it's almost like a Napoleon complex.
Wow.
They have.
Well, that might be why they got out of New York so fast. I mean, she held a rally for 5 minutes, and she got food. She was like, I need to go.
well, Bowman was out there, so you don't want to, Bowman, Jamal Bowman from New York has been very vocal about this stuff. He's very passionate, brother.
Yeah, he got with some of the crew. Yes, he did.
Yeah, he went off in the Capitol building, and I believe he was there at Marjorie Taylor Greene's protest.
They're screaming. Let them know.
He got with that Tennessee delegation. Yes, he did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
But hopefully we're very focused on those two individuals as targets next time, for re-election. So, working diligently to find, great alternatives to both of those representatives. We're working hard on that. So,
yeah, I've always thought that the red states have to be more intensely contested, and I thought they could. Like when I went down to my uncle is in West Virginia. I went there for a surprise birthday party for my aunt. Right, beautiful, had a lot of people there. But it was, it was the first time I ever saw it was a black barbershop and black owned barbershop. All the customers were white, right? So black people cutting hair, and it was all kinds of white people, moms taking their sons, right? When we were at the party, right? We had all sorts of people who were students because the school that they taught them was predominantly white, right? There were a lot of people who were who were interpersonally like friendly, and in terms of their their socialization. So I'm always thought that, and I understood why they vote the way they vote on a lot of things. Only in that, I think they don't think anyone pays attention to them, right? Or so I'm always thinking that Democrats could take over red states if they really understood the people who were there and understood that nobody kills poor white people like rich white people, right? Like,
but see, they don't, but they don't see it that way, and it's a situation where I always tell you that the Democratic Party is a big tent, and when you have people that think that they're disenfranchised and it's because of those other people, then they're not going to see it. And so I disagree with you to a point, John. I think they know what they're doing, but it's how they really feel. And some of it is ignorance and being sucked in by the media and believing the things that people say, and other is just basic beliefs, and that the beliefs are not great and they're unfortunate is definitely a problem, but it's what they really believe. So I'm not surprised that there's a barbershop down there like that, or people engaged like that. Different situations, are different, but then there are other people that just refuse to, participate as a great community. I mean, the barber's probably good and been doing it for years. So, I mean, everybody still likes quality too now, So
can I share something?
Yeah.
My wife shared a video with me earlier this week, and I don't know if I was scared, angry, amused, a bunch of different emotions I went through. But the video was of two white women. One was obviously liberal and progressive. The other one was super, super conservative, looked like she was somebody from some money. So the conversation was about slavery. And the girl who, was more conservative, she was like, I mean, come on, think about it. I mean, it was the times, I mean, some of them probably liked it. Girl's like, you're not trying to sit here and excuse slavery. I'm not trying to excuse slavery. I'm just saying, come on, think about it logically. Some of them liked it. I mean, not all the slave owners were bad. I mean, of course, you had some horrible ones, but they all weren't like that. So, I mean, if people are okay with it, then she was like, yo, you're not really sitting here trying to excuse slavery. I'm not trying to excuse slavery. That's not what I'm trying to do. You're trying to twist my words. What I'm saying is that some of them didn't have a problem with it. They were fed, they got clothes. I mean, this conversation was bananas. Like, we're having this conversation in 2023, but I think most white America thinks like that, or some level of that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not.
If you there's an interesting educator. I think her name is Jane Collins.
Oh, Jane Elliott.
Jane Elliott.
It's
Yeah,
my
look,
girl. It's my girl. It's my
you know,
girl.
and she breaks it down. People in this country, we've been conditioned to think this way. Our educational system teaches us to be this way. That's why some of us are so hateful to our own, because we're conditioned in an educational system that teaches you that black is bad. You know, that they don't do anything. They're not productive. They have no social redeeming value, and we learn that too. So yeah, there are a lot of self-hating blacks because if you're being educated, she says it's not education. She says it's indoctrination. So I would suggest to anybody that they go look at a experiment Jane Elliott did, where she separated people by eye color. They're white and black, and then so blue-eyed people were on one side and brown-eyed people were on the other, and they treated the blue-eyed people like dirt. And they started to speak up, and how you treat us this way and this and that. And Miss Elliott says, she asked the question. She says, this all white audience, she says, how many of you would like to live and go through what black people go through for one day? And nobody moved. She says, I don't think you understood what I asked. How many of you would like to go through what black people go through in this country every day? Stand up. She says, you see, that knows, because you know what's going on and you know what's wrong, that none of you would stand up. You know it. So if you wouldn't want it for you, how can you want it for anybody else? And it's deep. I mean, she's deep. So I would really tell anybody that wants to really, delve into this issue, that they Google Jane Elliott. Thanks, Hawk. I was looking at her yesterday.
Yeah, she's tremendous.
And I know we're getting toward the end of our time, but we definitely should talk more about this again, because I think that when we're looking at the situation in Tennessee, or when we have these red states that are like where 70% of the white vote, 80% of the white vote goes Republican, that's unsustainable for us, because when they get in these numbers, I think that there has to be some level of education about their class interest as well. But I know we can get into that a lot later. But Congressman,
Well, John, I think the country. I think the country is. I think the country is moving. And as bad as Donald Trump is and was and has been, a lot of these, right wing zealots are losing elections. They lost the Senate. They lost the presidency. They're losing in states, and we're gaining, and it's because of Donald Trump. So, I'm thanking for one thing,
Yeah, but you were saying, Congressman?
Yeah. So I think that we're moving in the right direction, and next election will tell us if we really are making strides in looking and seeing the country in the view that we'd like to see. I just think that we're moving in the right direction, and with the election of Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker, we'll be successful. We only need 6. We only need to flip six seats. We only need to flip 6 seats.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add and the Payne report for us?
No, I just want to thank all y'all for being here. Hakeem, it's good to see you. Rhino, my brother.
Likewise. Peace.
Zay, me and you do. and Ed, my brother, and even John, and John too. No,
Oh, I appreciate it.
No.
I appreciate being back and seeing you for the
It's
first
good.
time.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I was wondering where I was thinking, when we had the show last month, I was like, damn, the brother don't even want to be on with me anymore. Damn.
Every month it was with the kids. It was with the kids.
It's all good. It's good
I'm a
to
debate
see.
coach, and we're doing well. We're trying to build us up again. So
all right, that's right. Represent North, baby. Do it right now.
All day.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Y'all
All
take care. Hey, and Ed, you know what? I realized I forgot because I came on late. I didn't have my uncle with me.
Yeah, man.
But next month, I promise.
When I saw him at the march, I said I was going to go over there and say, should I just go over there and usurp the congressman and just go myself and say, sir, we need to have you on the Payne report, and then walk away.
It's all right.
Yeah,
I show that 91-year-old man deference every day.
Yeah, I walk over to him and just say, we'd like to have you on the Payne report, and walk away. You know?
And then I get a call. What's the Payne report?
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, man,
y'all be blessed. Be blessed.
We'd love to.
Yes,
we'd love to have him on to talk about what's going on in the country, particularly with what's going on down in Memphis, man.
Right.
He can speak to it.
Oh yeah.
From a voting rights perspective.
Well, you might need more. You might need more than an hour. You might need more than an hour with that pain.
Yeah. But let's make
all right, y'all. Peace.
All right, take care. And this is another week in All Politics Are Local. Thank you very much.
One last thing,
Congressman.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you very much, Congressman, and our previous guest. But Zai,
today is the anniversary of the birth of Billie Holiday, one of our first COINTELPRO talks.
Wow.
The voice.
And you know, Zaid, she really lost her life because she would not stop singing that song.
Right.
That's right.
Strange fruit.
She became a police target behind
drugs.
Strange Fruit.
Yeah.
Right. Targeted with heroin.
Unreal.
Well, thank you to Dr. Johanna Fernandez for coming on and talking about Mumia. Thank you for the people who came on for the Black is Beautiful movement. And thank you also, Congressman Payne, for a wonderful show for this evening. We'll be back next week, and I will see you next month.
Take care.
Nice beard.
2 fingers.
And you don't stop.